Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If, with another fanfiction. This is the move of What If Deku, Kota, and Eri gained the powers of SHAZAM. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Today was going pretty well if you asked 8 years old Izuku Midoriya. He and his best friend, 7-year-old Kota Izumi, had actually gotten to eat breakfast, which was a rare pleasure they only got to enjoy when they had enough food left over from dinner. A woman had pitied him enough to give him 1,000 yen, and that meant they could actually buy lunch from a nearby convenience store. After picking out some onigiri and paying for it, he and Kota walked out of the store and started making their way back to their hideout. Things were going good, until Izuku took a closer look at Kota as they walked through an alleyway, and noticed he was holding something under his shirt. Kota, Izuku said sternly, softly glaring at his friend. What are you hiding in your shirt? TCH. Kota looked away, his expression unchanging. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, you just teached me. Izuku pointed out. You only ever do that when I catch you stealing. Now what did you take? Be quiet. Do you want the police coming after us? Kota turned to his best friend. Ugh, fine. Look, Kota from under his shirt took out 2 bento sets. I got dinner. Kota, you can't just steal things. It's wrong. Izuku objected. The two stopped in the alleyway as the typical argument started over again. We need it more than he needs a couple yen. Kota argued. That's not the point. It's a crime. Izuku shouted. Is it a crime to not starve to death? Kota retorted. Iohub. Suddenly something hit Izuku, knocking him over. Izuku, Kota shouted in concern. Owa, Izuku groaned. The green-haired boy's vision started to refocus, and he saw a white-haired girl with red eyes and a horn laying on top of him. She seemed pretty out of it. Clearly, she hadn't been looking where she was going and wasn't expecting to bump into Izuku. Izuku started blushing from having a girl right on top of him and looked away. Hey, watch where you're going. Kota scolded her. Oh no. The girl finally realized she'd bumped into someone and had stopped running. She got up. Izuku followed suit and was about to start running. Eri, said a menacing voice coming from the allies' exit. The girl froze, and all 3 of them looked towards the end of the alley. Standing there was a man in a large coat with black hair, wearing some kind of plague doctor mask. He had 2, well, they could only really be described as goons beside him. The 3 men walked up to the trio, stopping right in front of the trio of children. Eri hid behind Izuku, trembling in fear of the man and instantly telling them that whoever this was bad news. Thank you for stopping my daughter. The man lied. She can get rather easily frightened, so if you could just give her back to me and run along, that would be appreciated. Izuku was about to say something, but Kota put out his hand in front of him, gaining his attention so Izuku could see the black-haired boy shake his head. Sorry about the trouble, sir. Kota walked forward. But she has something very important to us. The man raised an eyebrow. And that is. Kota looked both ways and motioned for the man to come closer. The man gave him a disgusted look but did so anyway, moving forward and leaning down to Kota's level. And so Kota got close and punched him in the balls. Ugh. The masked man was completely unprepared for that and fell over from the sheer shock and pain. Boss, your balls, one of the goons cried. He just hit the boss in the junk, the other one said. Run. Kota ran away from them as fast as he could. Izuku grabbed Eri and did the same. Go after them, you idiots. The man ordered the 2 goons, who had been so stunned by the sheer audacity of Kota. If they get away, it's your heads. With the threat to their lives clear, the goons started running as fast as they could to catch up to the children, who already had a good head start. The 3 kids kept on running, already starting to feel tired as their tiny bodies didn't have much stamina, and they could see the men starting to gain on them. They're catching up, Kota pointed out. Kota, let's go to the trains, Izuku suggested. I have an idea. Eri, I need you to say something when we get there. A few minutes later, at the train station, adults were going by their normal business until they suddenly heard a cry. Help! Izuku, Kota, and Eri ran in, stopping for a moment to catch their breath. Eri had tears on her face that were actually just water from Kota's quirk, but to the adults combined with her red eyes, made it seem like she was sobbing. Bad men. They touched me in my no-no places, and now I can't be a bride anymore. Eri cried out the line Izuku told her to say. Many gasps and looks of horror rang among the crowd before many of them moved to act. Get them on the train, one woman said. Someone call the police, cried a man. Get the heroes, another shouted. Meanwhile, a group of people ushered the kids onto the train. As the train doors closed, the 3 could see the 2 men coming in and getting called quite colorful names by the people. Are you okay, kids? A woman asked them. Why, yes, Eri sniffed. Keeping up the act, Izuku told her to put on as best she could, although, given the state of fear and shock she was in, that wasn't too hard. Kota leaned over to Izuku and whispered, "Hey, what did she mean by she can't be a bride anymore?" "I don't know, but I heard it somewhere and I know it's a bad thing," Izuku answered. Just as things were settling down and the adrenaline was wearing off, suddenly, there was a huge flash of light that blinded the three kids. Izuku cried out, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" Kota asked, doing the same. When the light died down, the children rubbed their eyes and looked around, only to find that everyone was gone, and they were now alone in an empty train. Kota cried out in shock. "What happened to all the people?" Izuku asked. While the two of them were freaking out, Eri looked up at one of the windows and Sorox. Then, the train seemed to go faster, so fast that they all had to hold onto one of the poles so they didn't fall down. The windows started freezing over and they could see strange lights coming in from the outside. This went on for several moments until suddenly, the train started to slow down and eventually come to a stop. The doors opened, but instead of another train station, they were met with the sight of some sort of cave. Out of confusion and wonderment, the three children with their eyes wide and their mouths hanging open walked out of the train and into the cave. "Whoa," Izuku said as the three of them admired the cave. It looked like someone had carved the room out of a cave. There were no lights, yet somehow the room remained lit, if dimly so. The things that drew the most attention were first, the demon-like statues that stood to the side of the main walkway, and secondly, the 6 thrones at the end of the walkway. And then they noticed him. Sitting in the center throne was an old man. He was very skinny and had very long white hair with a long white beard. There was so much of it that they could barely see his face. He was wearing a long robe and some slippers and was holding a long staff with some blue glowy thing at the end. "Welcome, children," he said, his voice hoarse but still loud enough that they could hear it. He got up from his throne and started walking towards them. "My name is SHAZAM." Kota gave him a funny look. "SHAZAM? Really?" "Yes, I am the last of the Wizard Council," he explained. "And this is..." "Okay, stop." Kota stopped him, giving him an irritated look. Wizards aren't real. Who are you? Where did you take us? And what do you want?" "Kota," Izuku scolded him, while Eri still hid behind him, giving the wizard a cautious gaze. He was going to explain. "Let the wizard talk." Kota grunted and crossed his arms. "Fine. As I was saying," SHAZAM continued, "this is the Rock of Eternity, where the wizards once resided. As for why I have brought you here, for that I must tell you a story. There were once 6 great wizards that made up the Wizard Council. However, despite our great power, we could not stop the hands of time from claiming their lives as we grew older. And as such, we decided to give our power to special champions that would protect the world from evil. However, the first to give his power chose poorly, and his champion became corrupt and had to be sealed away by us. The next 2 wizards did not want to give such great power to anyone else. So over the years, they distributed fragments of their power to newly born children. This is how the power now known as quirks came to be." Wait. Kota stopped him again. "Are you saying quirks are magic?" "SHHH. Izuku quieted his friend, before looking to the wizard to continue. The next 2 wizards did not wish to be stuck with the burden of choice after the first champion fell. The wizard continued. "And so they gave their powers to me, before passing away, allowing me to live hundreds of years longer and choose 3 champions. And now I choose you 3. You shall inherit my power." "Really?" Izuku had stars in his eyes, and a grin so big it hurt. After years of being quirkless Izuku, a powerless Deku, could it be that now he was going to get powers of his own? Eri was also thoroughly shocked. Someone thought she was worthy of something. "Really?" Kota looked at Izuku like he was crazy. "You actually believe this? He's obviously lying. Should you accept?" SHAZAM ignored Kota. "Put your hands on this staff and say my name." Izuku immediately put his hand on the staff and looked at the other 2 to do the same. "Come on guys, do it." Aye. Eri looked away in shame. "I don't think I'm worthy. I'm just a curse." "Come on, Izuku. This is obviously a load of bullshit." Kota cursed. "Language," Izuku scolded. "But it's true," Kota said. "And even if it was true, why us? We're not heroes or champions or whatever. Why not give to a hero? Or I don't know, an adult. I have yet to find any adult man or woman who both had a pure enough soul, except for one man, who already had so much power." The wizard explained. "As for why I choose you 3, he looked at Izuku. "You have had a heroic spirit since the beginning. And despite your struggles and your setbacks, and even facing all the horrors the world has thrown at you, you have remained pure, unbroken. You refuse to steal even if you must starve. You refuse to hurt others even if they hurt you, and put people first even if you must put yourself at risk." Izuku was now crying tears of joy. No one had ever praised him like that before. Not since his mom, not since she died. He turned to Eri. "You have been through horrors that would break the minds of most men, and yet you, a child, remain strong. You did not run from those men because of what they would do to you, but because of what they would do to others, using you. You have no reason to want to help anyone, and yet you do, because you are pure." Eri flinched and became flustered. She had never been praised like that. ever. And then he turned to Kota. And you, despite your pain, despite your words, and despite even your thoughts, when the time came you acted immediately to save another person, a stranger to you, and put yourself at risk to do so. Kota turned away. TCH. Not like I wanted to save her or anything, that guy was just a creep who needed to get punched. You three are worthy. Now place your hands on the staff and say my name, SHAZAM repeated. Izuku was obviously all in, but the other two remained hesitant. Come on guys, Izuku pleaded. If we do this then Eri won't need to worry about those people that were chasing her. Eri's eyes widened. She had never even considered it fighting over Hall. It just seemed to be an insane idea, but if she took this power, then maybe, just maybe, she could defend herself from him. And she'd never have to go back to that room again. Slowly, Eri made her way over to SHAZAM and grabbed his staff. Kota, please, Izuku begged his best friend. Ugh, Kota groaned, marching over and grabbing the staff. Nothing is gonna happen anyway, so why not? Now, say my name and you will be imbued with a fraction of the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the stamina of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the fortitude of Achilles, and the speed of Mercury, the wizard said. And who are those? Kota asked. Just say the name already, SHAZAM said, getting more and more irritated by Kota. Three looked at each other before looking back at the wizard and saying, SHAZAM, CRACKOOM. Suddenly 3 bolts of lightning stuck down where each of the children stood and engulfed them in a flash of light. Enough with the lights, Kota complained. And then he realized that his voice was no longer his voice, it was now much different. I feel weird, Eri said, her voice also surprising her with how mature it suddenly became. What happened? Izuku asked as they all opened their eyes. And then the changes became much more evident. Where the children once stood were now fully grown adults, looking to be in about their mid to early 20s, all wearing strange hero-like costumes. Izuku was now a large, muscular man standing at almost 7 feet tall, with a wide chest and large beefy arms and legs. It appears that puberty had big plans for the boy. His hair remained basically the same, however his face lost all trace of cuteness in exchange for a more defined handsome face, while still keeping the freckles. His costume was mostly emerald green, except his white cape and hood, his black belt and boots, and the white lightning bolt on his chest. Kota, in comparison to Izuku, was lean with a thinner but still muscular body, and at a far more average height. His hair had also gone mostly unchanged, but his face did become more mature, looking very much like his father. His costume was mostly blue, except white boots, a belt, a cape, and a hood, as well as the white lightning bolt on his chest. Eri was the shortest of the group before, and she still was, being about half a head shorter than Kota and quite a bit shorter than Izuku. Out of them all, she seemed the most petite, but if you looked closer you could see that she still had a lot of muscle. Like the others, her hair was unchanged, but her face did mature, although she did still maintain most if not all of her cute factor. Her costume was mostly red except for some gold trimming that lined parts of her costume, and her golden boots. Unlike the boys, instead of pants, she was wearing a skirt. The 3 of them looked at their newly changed bodies in shock and awe, all of them at loss for words. The first one to snap out of it was Izuku, who got a huge grin on his face as he could feel the new power in his body. It worked. Suddenly, Izuku sprinted towards the wizard, moving so fast he became a green blur. Thank you so much for wait a minute, do I have super speed? Izuku started running around the cave at amazing speeds, putting most top heroes to shame. I have a quirk. Eri, meanwhile, still wasn't used to the tingly feeling in her bodies, particularly in her hands. She raised them up, only for lightning to suddenly burst out of her palms and hit the roof of the cave. Ape. Eri jumped back, freaked out by her own power. Okay. Magic, maybe he wasn't lying, Kota admitted, only for Izuku to suddenly appear in front of him. Of course he wasn't lying. Look at us. This is so cool. I feel like I could fly. Izuku gushed. However, he suddenly stopped as he realized he had started to float. Oh my god, I can fly. Izuku took off and started flying really fast in a circle above everyone. Oh, suddenly everyone stopped and looked back at the wizard, who had fallen face first on the ground. Izuku gasped and zipped over to him. Mr. SHAZAM, Krakum. Suddenly Izuku was hit by another lightning bolt and was returned to his true form. Where did the magic go? Oh, SHAZAM groaned as he rolled over. Your power is not permanent. Anytime you say my name, you transform either into your champion form or your original body. SHAZAM, Izuku shouted. Krakum. The lightning hit Izuku again, and he turned back into his more powerful adult state. The boy sighed with relief that his newfound power had not been taken so quickly. SHAZAM coughed. Come here, children, quickly. Kota and Eri followed his instructions and walked over to the fallen old man. Izuku was about to help him back up, but the wizard stopped him. Do not bother, children. My time has come. What does that mean? Izuku asked him, his voice laced with concern. It means I am about to die, SHAZAM explained. Kota and Eri frowned, feeling horrible about watching a man die right in front of them. Is there anything we can do? Izuku asked, tears spilling from his eyes. No, it is simply an aging child. Nothing can be done about it. Well, the wizard looked at Eri. Not nothing per se, but I do wish to be saved regardless. It is my time. Now hear me, I have much to tell you. All three of them stood silent, ready to hear whatever he had to say. Firstly, none of you are at full power yet, the wizard said. Your bodies will take time to adapt, and you can only use your powers so much until your bodies completely adapt. Your powers will grow as you do. Learn them well. We will, sir. Izuku sniffed, still upset about someone dying right in front of him. And secondly, with my death, the seals me and the others had placed upon the many great evils in the world will be undone. The wizard explained. Slowly, but surely they will break free, and you will need to stop them. Wait, what great evils? Kota asked. What are they? Where are they? How? It is time, the wizard said faintly. Goodbye, children. Learn how to use your powers and become great heroes. And with those last words, the wizard closed his eyes and his breathing stopped. The three of them stood there in silence for several minutes. Eventually, Kota spoke up with the important question of, so how are we going to get out of here? Tarkum. All three of them were hit with lightning. And then suddenly they were no longer in the cave. They were back in the train with all the people back in it. Everyone gasped at the sudden appearance of the three, with many of them asking lots of questions. The trio was too confused to answer any of them, as they didn't know what just happened either. Then the doors opened and people filed out of the train and into the station, and Izuku, Kota, and Eri dazedly followed, still not sure what just happened or what to do next. And then they heard a familiar voice. Eri, where are you? All their heads turned towards the voice and saw that the masked man and his goons were here, looking for her. The masked man looked up and spotted her, and was shocked to see the now older-looking Eri. Eri, the man said, still in shock. At that moment, she panicked. Go away, Eri shouted, bringing her arms up. She shot out a bolt of lightning at the man. The bolt hit and he was sent flying backward, hitting the ground unconscious as his chest emitted smoke. AHHH. All the civilians panicked and started running away at the sight of a quirk being used in a villainous way. Eri looked down at her hands in shock and then back at the masked man. Two did that. They hit the boss. Kill him, one of the goons shouted. They both took out pistols, causing Kota and Eri to freeze up in terror, but Izuku's protective instinct activated and he stood in front of the both of them. Bang bang bang. The pistols fired, and the bullets hit Izuku, only to bounce off, doing no harm to him. Izuku blinked. He was frozen in shock for a moment, before his big smile returned. I'm bulletproof. The goons kept firing at Izuku, but the bullets did nothing to him. Not knowing he had nothing to fear from the bullets, Kota, moving faster than the blink of an eye, grabbed both guns and crushed them with his bare hands. Looks like we have super strength too, Kota assessed, with a devilish grin on his face. He then proceeded to flick both goons in the chest, sending them flying into a wall. Haha, take that, assholes. Kota laughed mockingly. Language, Izuku scolded. Oh come on, I'm an adult, I can swear. Kota argued. Bad words make for bad feelings, Izuku told him. Before the argument could progress any further, someone called out to them. What's going on here? All three of them turned their attention to the speaker, the pro hero, Death Arms. Oh my god, it's Death Arms, Izuku squealed, which sounded super weird with his much deeper voice. Hey hero, you're late, Kota mocked. We already took care of the bad guys. Death Arms looked at the unconscious villains. Okay, let me see your hero licenses. We kinda don't have any, Izuku nervously admitted. He had a bad feeling he knew where this was going. Well, then I'm gonna have to take you in, Death Arms said, moving towards them. Kota smirked and started walking towards the hero. I'd like to see you try, hero. Resisting arrest, huh? Well buddy, you asked for it. Death Arms cocked his fist back and brought it forward, intending to punch Kota in the face with his enhanced strength. Seeing the bullets on the floor told him they had some form of enhanced durability, so he didn't need to hold back much. However, much to the shock of almost everyone, Kota brought his hand forward and stopped the attack, catching the hero's fist. FWOOSH. A slight wind blew in Kota's face due to the force from Death Arms' punch, but this did nothing but make his cape flow. Death Arms was shocked. He had not expected someone to just outright block one of his punches. Kota smirked confidently. If magic was apparently real and he'd gotten his powers from a wizard, then he was pretty sure he was stronger than Death Arms. A hypothesis that had been proven right. My turn, Kota said, his devilish grin growing wider. While at speeds not even a pro hero could react to, Kota uppercut Death Arms' jaw. FWOOM. Death Arms were sent flying through the roof and high into the sky. The room filled with wind as the punch was so great that it stirred up the air around him. Izuku gasped. Death Arms. The green boyman flew up through the roof to chase the hero. After a few seconds, Izuku caught up to the hero and caught him before he could start falling. Oh my god, Death Arms, I'm so sorry, he didn't mean to do that. He's a nice guy, but he's kinda a jerk sometimes, and oh, you're asleep. Izuku realized that the hero had actually been knocked out by the punch, and not only that but his jaw was broken. Wow, Kota said as he and Eri flew up to Izuku. I didn't even hit him as hard I could. Kota, you code death arms. Izuku shouted. I know, right? Kota cheered, either not getting or ignoring the panic in Izuku's voice. If we beat up a hero, does that mean we're villains? Eri asked fearfully. Kota's smile dropped as the realization of what he'd just done. Let's just get him to a hospital and we'll figure out everything at home, Izuku suggested. Do you know where to find a hospital? Kota asked. No, Izuku said dejectedly. However, his mood brightened when he noticed police cars and a few ambulances showing up below them at the station. But they do. Izuku flew down towards the ambulance, with the other two following him. Hi. Hey, Izuku says, gaining the attention of all the police and paramedics. We accidentally knocked out Death Arm, sorry about that. His jaw is broken, so I'm just gonna leave him right here. Izuku placed Death Arms next to a stunned paramedic. So bye. Izuku flew off at top speed, with Kota and Eri following him. Later, elsewhere. We're finally here, Izuku said. The three of them had flown over to an abandoned, mostly destroyed mansion located at the forest at the edge of the city. Where are we? Eri asked. Home, Kota answered simply, as they flew down towards the building. It used to belong to some rich villains, but the heroes attacked them and took them all to jail, Izuku explained. The mansion was abandoned. Me and Kota heard about it and decided to stay here. As they landed, Eri could see more signs of the battle that had taken place. There were holes and cracks everywhere. Some rooms were mostly destroyed, while others stayed somewhat intact. There were burns in seemingly random places as well as some other signs of fighting. When they reached the door, Izuku had an idea. Let's turn back to normal for now, Izuku suggested. The wizard says our powers are limited, so we shouldn't use these forms unless we need them. Kota and Eri thought about it for a moment, before nodding their heads in agreement. SHAZAM. 3 bolts of lightning came down, turning them all back into children. They walked in and after a bit of trekking, they reached Izuku and Kota's room, which was like all the other rooms, but it had 2 mattresses in it. Phew, Izuku and Kota finally let themselves breathe, and seeing the 2 boys she now trusted start to relax, Eri lowered her guard a bit as well and released the tension she was holding onto. They were finally home, finally safe. Now, what were they gonna do? The 3 children sat cross-legged on one of the mattresses, trying to figure out what to do next. So let's start with what we should do about the bad guys first. Then we can talk about the magic powers, Izuku suggested. Both Kota and Izuku looked at Eri. Yeah, now that all that's over, explain yourself. Kota damned, making Eri flinch. Who are you? Who were those guys? And why were they after you? Kota, you're scaring her. Izuku scolded the younger boy. Ayatsuki, you helped me a lot, so I should tell you, Eri said. My name is Eri, I don't know my last name. That man in the mask is Overhaul, wants to take my blood to make bullets. What? Kota asked. That doesn't make any sense. Why would he use blood to make bullets? It's my quirk. Eri looked down in shame at the mention of her quirk. My quirk unit reverts people back to a previous stat. It does a lot of things. But if he puts my blood in some special bullets and shoots them at people, he said it can take people's quirks away. What? Izuku and Kota shouted simultaneously. That's insane, Kota shouted. Quirk erasing bullets, Izuku repeated, his eyes wide as saucers. With those, he could take down pro heroes in the top 10. He'd hurt a lot of people, Eri cried. Like he hurt me. I couldn't let him. I can't let my power hurt any more people. Kota raised an eyebrow. Any more people? Eri froze and then looked away, debating internally on if she should really tell them. In the end, it was a matter of guilt versus fear. The fear that if she told them, they would hate her, thinking she was a curse. But the guilt that came from not telling them was just as immense. She helped her escape Overhaul, and for that, she owed them everything, including the truth. A long time ago, when my quirk activated it killed my daddy, Eri explained sadly, causing looks of shock to return on both Izuku and Kota's faces. I didn't mean to, and I can't remember a lot, but Mommy said I was cursing. And Overhaul said it too. But even if that's true too, won't let my curse hurt anyone else. Stop please. Let me hide here, so Overhaul can't find me. There was a short pause of stunned silence, before Kota eventually shook his head and rolled his eyes. Ugh, that's so dumb. Huh? Eri leaned back fearfully. Had she said too much? Did they hate her now because of her quirk? Kota, Izuku scolded again. What, she's being dumb? Kota pouted. There's no such thing as a curse. She just got unlucky and her quirk came at a bad time. What? Eri didn't understand what she was hearing. Were they saying that she wasn't cursed? Kota gave her a stern look. Listen, on the same day we met you, we got magic powers. That's not cursed. It's like the opposite of cursed. It's like you're blessed or something like that, I don't know. Be blessed. Eri was completely taken aback. Kota's right. Izuku gave her the kindest smile she'd ever seen. You're not caused, Eri. And anyone who says you are is a liar and a meanie. I'm sure your quirk could do a lot of good things. Eri felt tears slowly start to emerge. You don't cry. Izuku moved forward and wrapped his arms around the smaller girl, bringing her into a reassuring embrace. It's okay, it's okay. Izuku's touch, no one had ever really given her this feeling before. When the Yakuza goons or the 8 precepts touched her, all she felt was fear. And when Overhaul touched her, all she felt was pain. But Izuku's touch, it made her feel safe, warm, comforted. She couldn't help but sink into it and cry even more. Kota, come here and join the hug, Izuku told his friend. Hey, why? Kota complained. Just do it, Izuku insisted. Why you don't have to, Eri said between sobs. Kota looked at the sobbing girl that was crying her eyes out into Izuku's chest and tried really hard to fight off the urge to help comfort her and the guilt of just standing there doing nothing. Izuku whined, motioning for him to join. Ugh, fine. Kota relented. Kota's hug was awkward and distant, to the point where it was hard to figure out if he was trying to hug her or push her away. But Eri appreciated the thought anyway. Thank you, Eri cried. I'm not doing this for you, I just got cold, Kota denied, looking away from her to hide his embarrassment blush. They stayed like this for a few minutes until Eri started to calm down. All right, enough with the sappy stuff. Kota pulled away the minute he thought Eri felt better. We have to figure out what to do about Overjerk. Do you think he got arrested back there by the police? Izuku frowned and shook his head. The police and the heroes need evidence to arrest someone. Without any evidence, they have to just let him go. Kota scowled. Then I say we use our new powers and go beat the tar out of him. I'm sure there's something in his base we can use as evidence. You can't, Eri protested almost immediately. He's too strong. Too strong. Did you see me back there? I took out a pro hero, Kota boasted. Izuku sighed at the fact his friend was boasting about turning them into criminals. What's his quirk? It's called Overhaul, Eri said. When he touches something, he can take it apart and put it back together however he wants, or he can not put it back together at all. Oh, that's so cool. Darn it, why do so many villains have cool quirks? Izuku lamented. Such a waste. Still don't think he could beat us. Kota crossed his arm defiantly. I thought you said you didn't want to be a hero, Izuku asked the boy, remembering a conversation they had had some time ago. I don't, but that guy needs to get decked. Kota punched his plan to demonstrate. But if we did that, we'd be vigilantes, Izuku pointed out. We're already criminals, so who cares? Kota countered. But if we just say sorry and explain ourselves, then maybe we can not be criminals, Izuku suggested. Well, do you have a better idea? Kota asked him. Yup. A few hours later. And so that's your whole story? The policeman asked the three of them. Izuku had decided that the logical thing to do rather than getting involved and becoming vigilantes was to go to the police. The three of them were now sitting in a police interrogation room. They had even been offered some food, which they gladly accepted. Yes, sir, Izuku said with his mouth still full. Hey, he was a homeless kid. Who could blame him for trying to stuff as much food into his mouth as possible? This food tastes weird, Kota thought, before shrugging his shoulders and going back to eating. I see. The policeman smiled and looked back at his partner. Well, it's a good thing you came to us first. Yeah, Izuku swallowed his food. Overhaul gonna pay us a pretty penny to get his hands on you. The man smirked sinisterly. What then? Suddenly, they all felt it. The kids started to feel woozy, their bodies rapidly weakening until they slumped over in their seats, and their eyes started to droop. Shell. Kota tried to call down the lightning, but he couldn't even utter a word at this point. And knew, Eri groaned, her body not even having the power to cry. Was the food worth it, kids? The man laughed. Hope so, nighty-night. Oh, Izuku groaned as he and the others fell asleep. A few hours later, wake up, Izuku groaned as he started to regain consciousness. He could feel a cold metal floor below him, and his body was being constricted and he couldn't move his arms or legs. At first, he was confused. However, as his brain started to wake up, he remembered what happened, and that confusion was replaced with panic and fear. His eyes darted open as he took in his surroundings, and much to his horror, only a few feet away from him was Overhaul. Next to the masked villain were three other villains, Mimic, Chronostasis, and Shin Nomoto. They were in a room with no windows, the only light coming from the lights above. Next to him was Kota and Eri, also tied up with rope, and also waking up. 3000. Izuku tried to shout, but he found his mouth was covered by tape. Izuku tried to shout Shazam, but with his mouth covered, he couldn't get the words out, and thus no lightning came. 3000. The other two, now fully awake, tried the same thing, but to no avail. Finally awake, Eri, Overhaul asked the small girl, a bit too calmly. You've caused a lot of trouble. Overhaul walked towards Eri and then crouched down to meet her tear-filled, terrified eyes. You ran away, causing me to worry. I even got hurt while I was looking for you. Overhaul glared at her, as his clam facade started to drop and venom could be heard lacing every word he spoke. And you ripped in these two, poor, innocent young boys, so you know what's going to happen to them, right? The price for disobeying me, 6000. 8,000. Eri desperately cried out for him to stop, tear-filled sobs that went unheard due to the tape. That's right, I'm going to kill them, Overhaul said. You've gotten 2 nice young boys killed. How many people do you have to hurt before you're satisfied, you monster? 8,000. Izuku tried to shout at Overhaul not to call her that, but that stupid tape was stopping him. Then, Overhaul reached out and ripped the tape off Eri's mouth. Do you have anything to say for yourself, Eri? Overhaul asked her. Want to apologize for killing these 2 boys? I fear filled Eri's mind, clouding it and making her thoughts fly out of control. There were so many things she wanted to say. She wanted to beg for Overhaul not to hurt them. She wanted to apologize for getting Kota and Izuku involved. She wanted to just cry because after thinking she finally escaped, she was brought back not even a day later. But in a moment of clarity, she figured out exactly what to say. SHAZAM, KAKOOM. Lightning burst down from the sky, mysteriously going through all the things in its way and striking Eri. GIHHH. Overhaul, who was right next to Eri, was also struck by the lightning as it was blown back a few feet. When the lightning flash subsided, Eri was now in her adult form and free of her bindings. What the fuck? Mimic shouted in shock. Eri, that was you, Overhaul shouted out in rage. He thought that the person that struck him with lightning just had a similar appearance to Eri. After all, Eri was a child, and her quirk had nothing to do with shooting lightning. He had already planned to hunt down and kill whoever it was that had struck him, but knowing it was Eri enraged him even further. In the face of Overhaul's furious gaze, Eri with speed beyond what they could even see picked up Kota and Izuku and ran off. What the hell just happened? Shin asked. Since when could Eri do that? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Overhaul growled. Lock down the base, send everyone. Bring them to me. Meanwhile, with Eri, Izuku, and Kota, Eri ran through all the Yakuza thugs in her way, taking them down literally without even trying, until she reached her destination. She ducked into a room and finally stopped. The poor girl was still hyperventilating, purely out of fear. She set both Izuku and Kota down and ripped the tape off of both their mouths, not even taking a moment to acknowledge the pain of having the tape ripped off. The 2 boys immediately knew what to do. SHAZAM! 2 bolts of lightning struck down and hit Izuku and Kota, transforming them into their stronger, bigger selves. Oh god, we almost died, Izuku shouted. If he didn't rip off that tape, we would have been taken apart, Kota added, before looking at Eri. Why'd you stop here? I don't know, Eri answered honestly. Izuku looked around and noticed the room was a bit strange for a room in a villain's evil lair. In the center was a large bed, and scattered all around the bed were toys. Unopened, unused toys. Eri, is this your room? Izuku put together. Eri nodded. In her panicked, desperate mind, she went to the closest place she thought was safe. Of course, she knew this place wasn't actually safe, but Overhaul had never heard her in this room. No, he'd take her out of this room, and then he'd hurt her. But it was that illusion of safety that caused her terrified mind to bring her here. GRRR. That bastard, Kota growled, his fear now quickly being replaced with rage. I'm gonna beat him till he turns blue. No, we need to leave, Eri insisted. We need to hide. No, Izuku said, gathering both of their attention. We can't just run away forever, they'd find us eventually, and we can't go to the police. Izuku looked up at both of them, determination blazing in his eyes. The best thing we can do is stop him right here, right now, and then hopefully find some evidence after we're done so we can give it straight to the heroes. But Eri tried to protest, but she couldn't find the words. I like this plan. Let's do it, Kota agreed, lighting sparking off of his body. Eri. Izuku walked up to Eri and put his hands on her shoulders. I know you think he's too strong, but knocked him out with one attack earlier. We can do this. Aye. She was so overwhelmed, she didn't know what to say still. PSH, she can leave if she wants. Kota rolled his eyes and cracked his knuckles. If that's what she wants, Izuku said. If you use your super speed, then you could leave and fly away pretty easily. But me and Kota are going to stay and fight. What do you want to do, Eri? Once again, Eri found herself without words, but this time it was all momentarily. Why are you doing all this? Why are you risking your lives for me? Why? Eri asked, completely baffled as to why anyone would do so much for someone like her. Once again, Izuku gave her that warm, pleasant smile. What do you mean? It's just the right thing to do. And you don't deserve to be stuck here with that creep anyway. Kota crossed his arms. But don't get me wrong. I'm not doing this for you. He's after us too, so we don't have a choice. Izuku, Kota, Eri whispered. She shut her eyes and made a decision. Despite her fears, despite how much she wanted to run, she couldn't just leave. She couldn't just stand aside and allow these two to fight for her. And if something went wrong, she'd never forgive herself. I'll fight, Eri shouted. The determination in her voice surprised everyone present, including her. But she meant it. She wouldn't leave these two behind. All right, then what are you waiting for? Kota said impatiently. Let's go kick some ass. Crash. It was at that moment the door was kicked at him, and behind it were 3 of Overhaul's 8 precepts of death. Toya Setsuno, quirk, steal. Yuhojo, quirk, crystallize. And Soramizu table, quirk, food. You being a naughty girl, Toya said, pulling out a gun and firing at them. BLAM BLAM BLAM. The bullets bounced off their impervious skin, much to the surprise of the 3 villains. Izuku was the first to attack, launching a bolt of lightning at Toya. The blonde-haired villain screamed as he was launched into the hallway, hitting the wall and slumping onto the floor unconscious as his chest was left smoking from the attack. Toya, he looked at his unconscious friend, before turning back to Izuku with a deadly glare. You bastard. The bald villain covered himself in hard crystals and charged at the trio. However, he never even made it a foot towards them before Kota punched dead center in the chest. The villain shouted out in pain. Bits of crystal went flying everywhere, as the punch Kota gave was so strong it broke through the villain's defense completely and sent him flying into the wall like his friend, slumped over and unconscious. Not wasting the time to talk, Tabe launched himself at Kota and bit down on his arm. However, much to his surprise, the only thing this hurt was his teeth. Tabe didn't understand. His quirk should have allowed him to bite right through this guy's arm. He tried to bite down hard, latching onto Kota's arm with his teeth, but he couldn't hit through it. Oh, no. Kota hissed. He shook around his arm to try and get Tape off, but the villain hung on, albeit he did get very nauseous from being shaken around at super speeds. Get off him, Eri shouted, blasting him with lightning. Rogaharaha, Tabe shouted as the electricity fried him. After the attack was done, Tabe's jaw relaxed and he slid to the floor, falling into unconsciousness like his friends. Are you okay, Kota? Izuku asked him. Fine, Kota grunted. It was like getting bit by a baby. All right, let's go find Overhaul, Izuku said. Right, Kota said. All right, Eri stuttered. And with that 3 ran out of the room. Back with Overhaul. This doesn't make any sense. Overhaul growled as he watched everything happen on the security cameras. How did Eri get this strong? What the hell are those quirks? It really just doesn't make sense. Chrono agreed. We know how Eri's quirk works and it's never done any of this. Not to mention those 2 kids having the exact same abilities seemingly. It just unless you think is behind this. No, Overhaul shook his head. If All for One found Eri and wanted to interfere with what we were doing, we simply would never have found her again. Whatever ... this is, it has nothing to do with him. So what is this? Chrono asked as he watched the trio effortlessly defeat the Yakuza thugs in their way. And what the hell does the SHAZAM mean? Mimic asked. The other 3 men looked at him strangely, wondering what the heck he was talking about. What? It's fucking weird. Eri and those brats said it before they transformed. What the heck does it mean? Is it a catchphrase or some shit? Mimic asked. Overhaul sighed and was about to dismiss what Mimic said from his mind when suddenly a few thoughts occurred. Why did they say this before they transformed? It could just be a catchphrase, but that didn't seem right. They didn't transform until after the tape was taken off their mouths. Why wait that long? Why not transform as soon they thought they were in danger? Did their ability to speak, or rather to say that word, have something to do with their transformation? The 3 are about to encounter the rest of the 8 precepts, Chrono reported, pulling Overhaul out of his thoughts. Overhaul would watch this next fight closely, and look for any weakness he could find. Back with the trio, the 3 of them dashed into a room, and suddenly stopped when they spotted some more intimidating foes. Rappa, Hekiji Tengai, and Rikia Katsukame. Well, looks like little Eri grew up, and grew up nice, Rikia said in an uncomfortable manner, making Eri shrink behind Kota and Izuku. You do know she is still a child, right? Tengai asked in a more than slightly disgusted tone. PSH, you act like that's the worst thing we've said to that girl. Rikia shrugged. Well, brats, did you come here for a beatdown? Cause that's what you're gonna get. Rappa taunted. Yeah, I don't think so. Kota had enough of waiting and shot out a bolt of lightning at Rappa. However, the bolt was blocked by a glowing green barrier, which was immediately destroyed by the attack. What? They destroyed my barrier in just one attack. Tengai's eyes went wide with shock. Come on, fight me like a man. Shooting lightnings for pusses. Rappa taunted. Being Birdo. Suddenly, as Kota was being all confident, he started getting dizzy. Kota, Izuku and Eri started stumbling around, as they struggled to maintain balance in the face of overwhelming dizziness. The room is spinning, Eri said, feeling dizzy. The 3 of them looked up, and saw Deidoro Sakaki, hanging from the ceiling with a bottle of alcohol. His quirk must be making us dizzy. Izuku realized. Heya. Rappa made it into punching distance of Kota and unleashed a rapid barrage of blows at the man-child in blue. Kota was launched back into a wall, hitting it so hard it left a human-sized dent. Kota, Izuku shouted out in concern. I am fine. Kota tried to pull himself up, but that was easier said than done. Not because of Rappa's attack, which had only just barely hurt, but Deidoro's quirk on the other hand was making things much harder. TCH, can someone take that bastard out? I got it. Eri tried to hit the villain with a bolt of lightning, but due to her dizziness, she was way off the mark. Naixamia drunk. Deidoro slurred. Izuku went to try and help by throwing some more lightning at Deidoro, but the other Yakuza members weren't just gonna stand by and let him. Rikia grabbed Izuku's hand and started using his quirk to drain his vitality. Man, you got a lot of this stuff. Izuku threw out a dizzy punch. Rikia easily dodged the punch, but wind pressure resulting from the punch knocked him back onto his ass. This kid's punches are no joke, Rikia commented as he pulled himself back up. Izuku. Eri went to throw some lightning at Rikia, but Rappa stopped her with a barrage of punches. Eri was sent flying into a wall, just like Kota. This is really fucking annoying. Kota's eyes glowed with lightning, as he could feel power welling up inside him. He raised his hands, which were brimming with electricity, and unleashed a huge wave of lightning. This attack would have hit basically everyone on the ground if Tengai had not put up a barrier to block the attack. His attack is too strong. Tengai struggled to keep the barrier together, but it was cracking very quickly. Unfortunately, before Kota could destroy it, he lost his focus and fell over, his attack dissipating as Deidoro's quirk worked its magic. Tengai deactivated his quirk. Take them out quickly. I can't keep blocking their attacks. What worthless shield you are then. Rappa charged towards Kota and unleashed another barrage of attacks. Kota was once again unable to stand his ground and knocked back. Damn drunk. Hehe. Deidoro laughed as he took another drink. Meanwhile, Izuku had once again engaged Rikia. The larger man grabbed Izuku and tried to suck as much vitality out of him as he could. I can feel my strength draining away, Izuku thought. He could easily throw him off or hit him with electricity when suddenly he had some sort of epiphany. Izuku struggled a bit, and with his strength, he managed to force himself onto the ground, with Rikia still grabbing onto him. The green champion struggled to move around due to the dizziness, but eventually, he managed to make it right under where Deidoro was hanging, with Rikia still on him. I may be too dizzy to aim right, but I know something that always comes straight down, Izuku thought. SHAZAM. KRAKOOM. AHHH. The lightning bolt came straight down, hitting Izuku, Rikia, and Deidoro, frying the latter too and reverting Izuku to his child form. When the lightning flash died down, Deidoro fell to the ground and Rikia slumped over, both down and out as their bodies smoked. Izuku crawled out from under the massive villain, and immediately shouted SHAZAM. KRAKOOM. And in a flash, he was back into his adult form. Oh no, it was at this moment Tengai realized that the fight was over. With the dizziness gone, Eri ran up to Tengai at speeds he couldn't react to, and backhanded him into a wall, taking him out of the fight as well. Finally, now you can put up a real fight, Rappa smirked, as he once again charged at Kota and let his fist fly. However, this time, the boy was ready for it and grabbed both of Rappa's fists, stopping his attack in its tracks. How's this for a real fight? Kota said, before unleashing his lightning. Raragaraga. Rappa's body spazzed out as a crap ton of electricity ran through his body. After a few seconds, Kota stopped his attack, and Rappa fell to the floor. Oh, my head still hurts, Eri groaned. Yeah, that guy was really annoying, Kota growled, walking over to Deidoro's body and giving it a light kick, probably breaking a few ribs. Nice work taking him out, Izu. Thanks. Izuku smiled at them briefly, before turning towards the corridor that would lead them to Overhaul. Let's go. Back with Overhaul. Damn it, Chrono cursed, slamming his fist against the wall. They didn't even stand a chance. Even Rappa's attacks barely hurt them, Shin noted, sweating nervously under his clothes. They only lasted as long as they did because of Deidoro's quirk. What are you two worrying about? Mimic shouted at them. We're the fucking Yakuza. We can't be taken down by a bunch of twerps. Right, boss? All three of them looked at Overhaul, who was deep in thought. Boss, Mimic repeated. That word again, SHAZAM. Overhaul spoke. He said it when he transformed back into a child. And again when he turned back into an adult. Shin, I have an idea. Back with the trio. This place is like a maze, Kota pointed out as they ran through the base. He's over there. Eri guided them. After a few more moments, with Eri giving them directions, they finally reached the room Overhaul, and the rest of his men were in, except for Mimic, who was nowhere to be seen. However, this went unnoticed by the three champions. It's over, Overhaul. Izuku shouted at the villain. Surrender now and we won't have to hurt you. Speak for yourself, Kota said. I've been looking forward to this. Overhaul turned to his black-cloaked minion. Shin walked forward. How do you transform? Suddenly, all three of them were compelled to say. We say, SHAZAM. KRAKOOM. 3 lightning bolts came down and reverted all three of them to their child states. All three of them were in shock. Their mouths moved without them wanting to, forcing them to return to their helpless forms. After the shock wore off, all three of them were about to say SHAZAM again. However, the steel floor moved upwards and grabbed them by the mouths before wrapping around their bodies and keeping them in place. 4000. The kids struggled as best they could, but to no avail. Once again, they were gagged and bound before Overhaul, completely and utterly helpless. Good work, Mimic. Overhaul praised his lackey before focusing his attention on the children. Ari. When will you learn? You belong to me. No matter how powerful you get, you will never be free of me. 4000. Ari was once again in tears. I should have told them to leave. We shouldn't have done this. Now, Overhaul took off his glove. Where are we? Hey, boss, said Mimic's voice coming from the walls. Now that Ari's got this power, how are we gonna keep her locked up? Don't worry about that. I'll just have to put her in a coma, just like him, Overhaul explained. Now, which one of these two should I kill first? 3000 GH. MMPH. Izuku kept trying to struggle his way free, while Kota simply leveled a death glare at Overhaul, which the villain noticed. You're the one that punched me in the testicles earlier. Overhaul glared at the small boy. Yes, I think I'll take you first. MMMPHH. As Overhaul got closer and closer to Kota, making sure to take his time to fill their hearts with fear and dread before they died, Izuku and Ri tried to call out for him to stop, but their muffled cries went unheard. As Overhaul's hand got closer and closer to Kota's face, Kota wiggled his hands around. He couldn't move his arms, but he could wiggle his wrist around, just enough to face his palm towards Overhaul's head. Splash! Just as Overhaul was about to touch Kota, the boy activated his quirk and unleashed his quirk at max power, shooting the strongest blast of water he could manage directly at the villain's face. This didn't do any damage, but it did surprise Overhaul enough to cause him to fall over and made his hand hit the floor. Overhaul's quirk activated, and the first layer of the floor was instantaneously destroyed, knocking the other two villains off their feet and freeing the three children. SHAZAM! Kota shouted the moment he could. KRAKOOM! The lightning struck, and Kota was once again in his adult body. Before the villains could get their act together, he struck Shin with lightning, so powerful it knocked him through a wall and caused him to pass out immediately. No, Overhaul growled. He noticed Izuku had not transformed yet and decided it best to take him out while he could. Using his quirk, he reformed the broken floor into a wave of spikes and sent them to Izuku. Not on my watch. Kota, using his super speed, got in front of Izuku and took the attack, the spikes breaking against his chest. What are you two waiting for? Say the word. Izuku and Ri, who were both initially in shock, finally got their heads clear and said, SHAZAM! KRAKOOM! Yes, Izuku cried. Great work, Kota. Kota gave a cocky smirk, as if I was gonna let this bastard kill me. Now let's kick his ass. No, damn it. Get away. Chrono sent out his hair arrow at them, trying to defend Overhaul, but this predictably did nothing but bounce off Izuku's chest, who then retaliated with a lightning bolt, taking him out of the fight as well. Your turn, you bird-faced bastard. Kota was about to attack Overhaul, but then the floor rose up, creating a wall between them and Overhaul. As if I'd let you. Mimic literally sent the entire room at them, sending columns and pillars at them, moving the floor around, doing everything in his power to attack the three. But the trio smashed through anything sent at them. Steel and concrete were all either punched or blasted with powerful bolts of lightning. Meanwhile, the entire time the room kept getting smaller and smaller as Mimic tried to crush them with the room itself. He's in the walls. We just need to find him, Izuku said as he punched through another concrete pillar. Here he blasted two slabs of steel that were thrown at them and noticed out of the corner of her eye an eyeball looking down at them from above. Up there. I see him. Shit. Mimic tried to move away through the walls, but he wasn't fast enough, and Kota charged at him, breaking through the wall and grabbing hold of the villain. Kota dragged him upwards through the dirt, concrete, and steel until they reached the surface and flew in the air. HRAGHHH. Kota slammed the villain down into the Yakuza's front garden, hitting the dirt with a loud thud, before flying down, punching him in the face. Mimic blacked out, regretting not being able to do more. Izuku and Ri flew out of the hole Kota made, and flew towards their friend, looking down at the crater he made with the unconscious Mimic in it. Yua, he got blood all over my hand. Kota raised his fist and shook it around, the rapid shaking splattering the blood off his hand. Is he okay? Ri asked timidly. Sure, she absolutely feared and despised these people, but she didn't want to kill Enio, not again. Kota looked down at his fallen foe and noticed his raspy breaths. He's still breathing, so he's fine. Now, where's over? Suddenly, the ground beneath them started to rumble and shake. The three of them flew up into the night sky to avoid losing their footing as the floor started to crack. What's going on? Izuku asked. Ri's eyes widened with fear, as the dread in her heart told her exactly who was causing this. It's him. RAHHH. With a demonic cry, an enormous, monstrous Overhaul burst out the ground. ERI. Overhaul reached out an enormous claw at them, but they simply flew away to dodge it. How did he do that? Kota asked in complete shock. I don't know, Ri answered. Never in her life has she seen Overhaul turn into something this inhuman before. Little did they know, while they were busy with Mimic, Overhaul carved his way through his base with his quirk and fused himself with the fallen members of the 8 precepts. Calm down, Izuku urged his 2 companions. Just because he's bigger doesn't mean he can stop us. RAHHH. Overhaul lunged at them, jumping into the air with arms out to try and grab them. Once again they easily dodged this by just flying to the side, and Overhaul crashed into the ground. AHHH. The street and pavement cracked and broke open as Overhaul landed, and all the people tried to flee from the monster. Oh, no, the people, Izuku shouted. RAHH. Overhaul used some of his massive arms to pick up cars and throw them at the trio, with people still in them. Izuku caught the cars, placing them down and then catching more at super speeds, before flying back up to the others. We need to get the people away from him, or him away from the people. Otherwise, a lot of people are gonna die. ERI. Overhaul leaped at them but once again couldn't hit them. Wait a minute. Izuku realized something. Before Overhaul could hit the ground, Izuku dashed underneath his massive chest and punched him upwards. The punch tore a hole through the monster's chest like it was made of wet tissue paper, as well as sending him flying into the air, past Kota and Eri. The 3 of them looked at the massive hole in Overhaul's chest in horror. And no, Izuku shouted, thinking he'd killed him. Suddenly, the hole repaired itself, and Overhaul was good as new and howling with rage. He heals, Kota growled. He must be taking himself apart and putting himself back together. Izuku realized. Such a waste of a good quirk. Izuku, focus. Kota glared at his friend. Right, sorry. We need to keep him in the air. He can't hurt anyone up there, but someone still has to get all the people away from here. Izuku ordered. Well, I'll keep the bastard in the sky, so don't worry. And with that, Kota flew off towards Overhaul, punching one of the villain's many arms off. While Kota fought the monster, Izuku and Eri were left to figure out who would help the civilian. Izuku looked at Eri, who was staring at Overhaul, frozen with fear and horror. Eri. Izuku flew over to her and grabbed her by the shoulders, shaking her until he managed to get her attention. I know you must be scared, but you don't have to fight that thing. Me and Kota can beat him while you get all the people away to safety. I don't know if I can. Eri trembled slightly in Izuku's arms. You have to try, Izuku told her sternly. We're the reason this is happening. If someone gets hurt because of him, then that's our fault. 2 will try. Eri managed to pull out a bit more resolve. Good, the police and the heroes should have some kind of barrier or line set up. Put everyone close by, behind that line, Izuku told her. Okay. Eri took a deep breath. I have to do this. She sped away, finding the police line Izuku told her about in seconds. Who's that? Asked a policewoman. I've never seen that hero before, a policeman said. Eri wasted no more time, dashing away and grabbing the first 2 people she could find, before flying back and putting them behind the line. What the one of the people that was grabbed shouted out loud. Neither of them had seen what had happened, only seeing a red blur, and then they were suddenly in a new location. Then that same red blur flew next to them and 2 more people appeared. And then again, 2 more people, and again and again. In a matter of seconds, Eri had already rescued a dozen people and wasn't slowing down. Izuku and Kota were doing so much for her, and she had to do her part. Meanwhile, Izuku and Kota were rapidly destroying huge chunks of Overhaul's body with a combination of punches and lightning. But Overhaul kept putting himself together no matter how many times they took him apart. Overhaul turned his arms into massive tendrils and sent them at Izuku, who blasted them to pieces with lightning, and then Kota flew past him and punched right through Overhaul's chest. You brats. Overhaul roared at them as he put himself back together. Children like you could never understand. Eri is mine. She belongs to me. No, she doesn't. Kota blasted him in the back with a powerful bolt of lightning. I'm getting sick and tired of you talking. Kota kept pelting Overhaul with lightning bolts, destroying massive parts of his body one after the other, never letting up. He charged up another electric attack. Time to end this hack. However, just as Kota was about to throw a huge bolt of lightning to finally end Overhaul, KRAKOOM, suddenly a lightning bolt came down and hit Kota, transforming him back into a child. What? Kota shouted out in surprise before he started screaming because he was falling out of the sky. AHHH. Kota. Izuku dashed up and caught him before he could fall too far, and brought them both back to the ground. Crash. Without Izuku or Kota keeping him in the air, Overhaul's charred body fell into a building, destroying it and bringing them both it and him to the ground. Kota, what happened? Izuku asked the transformed boy. I don't know, Kota shouted, only to suddenly fall to the ground. Why do I feel so tired? SHAZAM. KRAKOOM. The lightning came down, turning Kota back into an adult, however. KRAKOOM. Just a moment later the lightning came back down and turned him back into a kid. Kota fell on his back, completely exhausted. Now I feel even more tired. What happened? Eri flew down next to them. She had seen the lightning strike and figured something must have gone wrong if either of them were turning back into kids at a time like this. Kota can't use his powers. Izuku searched his brain for any reason why this might have happened. But why wait? The wizard said our powers were limited. We must only be able to use so much power right now. So we can't just keep fighting him? Yuri asked fearfully. No, Izuku shook his head. If Kota's out of power, then that means we'll probably be out of power too soon. Yuri gasped out in horror. Damn it, Kota cursed, as he tried not to fall asleep. Overhaul had put himself back together and rose up, looking for them. We have to be smart. We have to come up with a plan. Izuku stuttered, starting to panic slightly. As Izuku muttered away trying to figure out an answer, a solution suddenly appeared in Yuri's mind. She'd have to use her quirk on him. But if I did that I might kill him, Yuri thought. And so the decision came. Did she risk it and see if she and Izuku could take on Overhaul with their leftover power? And if they failed, they would die. Or she could use her quirk on Overhaul and possibly kill him. In the end, it came down to this. Risk their lives or risk theirs. Yuri shut her eyes and made her choice. She flew up, away from Izuku and Kota, and made her way towards Overhaul. She heard Izuku call her name behind her, but she ignored him. When she reached Overhaul, he noticed her and turned to face the girl he had hurt oh so much. Yuri, you're mine. Come here. As Overhaul reached out to her, Yuri froze. Now faced with the monster her tormentor had become, she was stuck with intense fear. However, her horns started to glow, and a green aura started to encompass her body. Overhaul's huge claws enclosed on her, and then a green flash consumed everything. Whoa! Izuku, who had flown after Yuri, was blinded by this flash and had to look away. When the flash died down, Overhaul and vanished completely, leaving only Yuri, flying in place, her eyes wide and still filled with fear and shock. Krakoom. Without saying the word, lightning came down and stuck Yuri, transforming her back to normal. Izuku grabbed her as she started falling, and held her in his arms. Yuri, what happened? Where'd he go? Izuku asked her, his voice full of confusion. He's dead. Yuri's voice was low and tired, her tear-filled eyes struggling to stay open. I killed him. Was all Izuku said, as he looked back at where Overhaul had been. That massive, building-sized monster, gone in a flash, all because of Yuri's quirk. But even more shocking, they had killed someone. Sure, it was Yuri that did it, but it was only because they had run out of options, and because he couldn't come up with a better one. So in Izuku's eyes, this was more his fault than hers. But he couldn't focus on that now. The heroes would be here soon, and he could already hear news helicopters making their way over. They had to leave, now. Yuri, just go to sleep. We're going home, Izuku told her. With tears still in her eyes, she obeyed and fell into a deep slumber. Wasting no more time, Izuku used his super speed to scoop up Kota, who was now also sleeping from where he had left him, and flew away. Shortly, at the destroyed manor, Izuku made it back to the manor in less than 2 minutes. He dashed through the door and flew through the halls, not stopping until he reached the room he and Kota took up residence in. Once he finally reached that room, he finally calmed down. Phew, I made it. Izuku breathed a sigh of relief. He was worried that at some point while he was flying, he would overuse his power and transform back. After dropping both Yuri and Kota down on the 2 beds, Izuku finally transformed back. SHAZAM! Lightning struck, and Izuku was back in his child form once more, and was extremely tired. He collapsed on the floor, sitting back against a wall. I don't understand. I wasn't anywhere near this tired when I was transformed. I wasn't even tired at all. Can I not get tired in that form? Izuku wondered. I don't think I had much power left to use in that form. I am so tired. Unable to fight off sleep much longer, Izuku closed his eyes and fell into unconsciousness. The next afternoon, the trio started to open their eyes. Strangely, they did so all at once, perhaps because they all fell asleep at the same time, or perhaps because of the magic. But all at once they began to rouse from their slumber. Oh, Kota groaned. He felt groggy for a moment, as his brain started to wake, but then he remembered what had happened yesterday, and he instantly woke up. What happened? Where's Overhaul? Yuri, who was also just starting to remember yesterday, recalled what happened to Overhaul. He died, Izuku answered. Uneasiness and sadness were thick in his voice, as the realization of what they'd just done. Yuri used her quirk and we killed him. We killed him, Kota repeated in shock. Yuri hung her head in shame. No, I killed him. It's my fault too, was scared and I didn't want him to hurt you, so I'm sorry. Once again, Yuri burst into tears, thinking that now it was over. They'd seen her use her quirk on someone. They'd seen her kill someone. Surely they'd see what a monster she was now. Surely they'd hate her. The room was nearly dead silent for a few minutes, with the only sound coming from Yuri's sobs, as the other two took time to process this information. As Yuri waited for their inevitable rejection, she instead heard, "Why are you apologizing?" Yuri stopped crying for a moment and looked up at Kota, Who had been the one to ask the question? Kota seemed frustrated. Not overly angry or sad, just frustrated. It's not your fault. You did what you needed to do. Kota crossed his arms. If anything, it's his fault for trying to kill us. You didn't have a choice, so don't cry about it. But Irie was once again left speechless. How was she supposed to react to that? And you? Kota turned to Izuku, who looked up at him in alarm. Don't blame yourself either. But if I just used my powers better or just came up with a better idea, then Kota cut him off. It takes heroes years to learn how to plan and use their powers. You got yours yesterday, Kota pointed out. And where were the heroes anyway? Why didn't they help? Well, we kept Overhaul up in the air a lot, so they probably couldn't have gotten to him. Izuku defended the heroes he loved so much. And what about All Might? Or Hux? Why didn't they help? It's not like they couldn't see him. He was the size of a skyscraper, Kota shouted. Where were they? And maybe they were busy, Izuku suggested. Too busy to stop a giant rampaging monster, Kota argued. Why did we have to take down a crime boss all by ourselves? We're just kids. But we did it. We took them all down, and we saved a lot of people, Three butted in. But I killed him and saved a bunch of people by doing so. How many people would that monster have hurt or killed if we didn't stop him? Kota continued. Are you saying we should have killed him? Izuku asked. Not quite sure what he was saying. Yes, we didn't have a choice, Kota answered. It's not our fault that we couldn't master our powers after having them for a day. It's not our fault we couldn't beat a super powerful crime boss after fighting his goons all day. It's not our fault we had to kill him. It's not our fault we wanted to live. Kota stopped to catch his breath after telling so much, giving the other two time to speak. I guess even heroes have to kill sometimes, Izuku said. He didn't truly believe that there was no other way, but he saw Kota's point. But that didn't make the terrible feeling go away. He thought about Kota's words as well. Overhaul was a monster, of that she was certain. How many people would he hurt? How many people would he have hurt with those bullets if he caught her? Was it okay to kill him? Her brain told that Kota was right, but her heart was undecided. But one thing she could at least take solace in is that she was finally free. Overhaul could never hurt her, or anyone ever again. More tears spilled from her eyes. Are you crying again? Kota scowled. I've known you for a day and you cry more than Izuku. Hey, Izuku objected. I told you it's not your fault. Kota repeated. No, but I'm free. Eri whispered. I don't have to go back to him anymore. He can't hurt me, I'm free. There were a few moments of silence, as they acknowledged what she said and what it meant. So, where are you going to go? Izuku asked her. Do you have any family? Eri shook her head. They don't want me. Well, you could stay with us. Izuku told her to try and cheer her up. Why you want me to stay with you? Eri asked. Despite everything they'd said to her, she was still surprised they'd want her around. Well, you got nowhere else to go, so might as well, Kota told her. Eri tried and failed to respond, once again overwhelmed with emotion. Izuku stood up and gave her a determined look. Let's stay together and help each other as friends. Okay, Eri. Eri paused, and eventually she found her words. Oh, okay. And with that, a legendary trio was formed. Although they were inexperienced children, they all held great power within them. And that power would be needed to face the challenges to come. Meanwhile, in the Egyptian desert, under the sands of Egypt, there was a door with a lightning bolt symbol engraved on it. THROOM. Suddenly, on the door, a small crack appeared. Welcome to HNN News, said a newsman as he and a newswoman sat at the typical news desk and had the typical coffee. This morning we have more news on the vigilante group that appeared 2 weeks ago, the newswoman said as the screen showed pictures that had been taken of the three while in their battle with Overhaul. Although they were barely visible in them due to their speed and the fact that the battle had taken place at night, there is no official name for this group. However, people have taken to calling them the Marvels, on account of their incredible power which they'd been using quite often. The newsman interjected. Marvel Midori has been on a saving spree since then. He saved every resident of a collapsing apartment building, stopped 9 villain attacks, held up a collapsing bridge long enough for heroes to evacuate everyone on it, and has even been seen helping cats out of trees. Videos of Izuku in his transformed state, now called Marvel Midori by the people, doing amazing things and saving lives. Meanwhile, Marvel AI has been doing less heroic acts. Namely, he can be seen doing small labors for people, using his powers for personal gain. The newswoman said, although all his clients have denied saying they paid him or asked him to do anything, it's highly unlikely that is the case. Videos of Kota in his transformed state, now called Marvel AI, doing small tasks, blowing the leaves off someone's lawn by blowing them away, doing tricks with his lightning at a party, and also helping cats out of trees, and the later accepting reward money. Marvel Aka has yet to be seen after her appearance in the battle with Kai Chisaki, and her disappearance after being struck by lightning. The newsman reported. A video taken on someone's phone showed Eri in her transformed state, now called Marvel Aka. Right after she killed Overhaul, she was then struck by lightning and turned back into a little girl. However, the camera was too far away and it was too dark to actually see her transform, so it just looked like she had vanished. Little is known about these vigilantes, other than they are extremely powerful, the newswoman warned. And while the latter two may seem harmless, and while Marvel Midori may seem very hero-like, they are dangerous vigilantes, responsible for the disappearance of Kai Chisaki and PWWW. The television was turned off by none other than Kota. It had been 2 weeks since getting their powers, and Kota had made some renovations to their room in the manor. Firstly, they now had 3 mattresses as well as pillows to go along with their blankets. He also had a busted-up old couch that was torn, with some fixes being made with duct tape. There was also an old refrigerator that, despite not being plugged in, still seemed to work. The same thing went for the old TV. That also was not plugged in, but functioned as if it was. The room was a lot less dirty now, thanks to Eri doing her very best to clean the place up, partially because she wanted to help out, and partially because Overhaul was a huge clean freak and instilled these habits into her. Speaking of Eri, she had finally gotten out of her old clothes and into some new ones. They were cheap and she didn't have many, but it was better than what she was wearing before. Don't these losers have anything better to report? Kota complained. Also, what the heck are those names? They literally called green, blue, and red. Eri remained silent. She hadn't said much since she'd started living with Kota and Izuku. Almost as if she was scared she said the wrong thing and got kicked out. A few moments later, the door to the room opened, and Izuku walked in, looking a bit tired. There you are. Finally. You were out there. For Kota looked at the new clock he got. 4 hours. How did you not to transform already? I just got better at using my power. Izuku yawned as he walked over to his mattress, collapsing on it promptly. You know, you could be using that power to make us some more money. I'm the only thing keeping us all from starving, Kota grumbled. I even got us some furniture. Oh yeah, how does that stuff work without electricity? Izuku asked as he pulled his blanket over his body. Izuku, we shoot lightning. Kota answered as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. I don't think that should work like that. Izuku responded. It's magic, who knows how it works? Kota shook his head. The point is that you should do something else besides play hero. Something that can actually help you. At least ask for a reward. Izuku frowned. Being a hero is its own reward. Kota rolled his eyes. Does that reward feed you or keep you warm? No, Izuku hesitantly admitted. Then it's a pretty bad reward. Kota deadpanned. Izuku shook his head and started to fall asleep. You just don't get it. I'm also learning how to use my powers. We're super strong. We could beat all kinds of villains if we learned how to use our powers right. We could even beat villain that killed your parents. At that moment, both Kota and Eri froze. Eri froze because up until this point, she had no idea what had happened to either Izuku or Kota's parents. She was curious but too afraid to ask in fear of offending them. But to hear that Kota's parents were killed, that something so terrible happened to someone she cared about, felt horrible. Kota, on the other hand, was busy processing this thought that Izuku planted in his head. Muscular and a rank villain, the man who killed his parents. He was no joke when it came to power. He killed 2 pro heroes after all. Never in all his life did he even think about revenge, because he didn't think he would be capable of it. But now, things were different. He had power, incredible power, power that puts most pros to shame. He could take down the man who took everything from him. Kota hopped up from the couch, ran over to Izuku's bed, before shaking the green-haired boy awake. Izuku, wake up. Huh? Izuku opened his eyes, if only slightly. Next time you go out to do your hero thing, I'm going with you, Kota declared, a mix of determination and anger flashing in his eyes. Oh hawk, Izuku said. He was half asleep so he barely understood what Kota was saying. Can I come too? Eri asked very hesitantly, while also looking away from the two of them. You want to help too, Eri? Kota asked her, slightly shocked by this request. Eri nodded, still looking away from the two of them. I want to help like Izuku. This was partially the truth. She had always looked up to the way Izuku went out and helped people, just for the sake of helping people, but she'd always been too afraid of messing up and hurting someone to join him. But now that Kota was going, if she stayed then she would be left all alone. She didn't want to be alone. Not again. More the help the better, I guess. Kota shrugged. The next day, in the Hoth marketplace, screams erupted from the marketplace as civilians ran, trying to get as far as they could from the threat. And what was the threat? A villain made almost entirely of sludge was running through there, taking all the money he could from the various stores, and no one could stop him. The police were, as usual, unable to do anything, and Death Arms, the hero that had shown up, couldn't touch the villain. None of you can even touch me, the sludge villain said as it ran. The villain's eyes swiveled around and landed on a young woman. Ah, an invisibility cloak, you'll do, the villain said maliciously as it lunged towards the girl. Help me, the woman cried, paralyzed with fear. Swoosh. Suddenly, as the sludge villain was about to grab her, there was a blur of red, and then she was gone. Huh. The villain paused, confused by the sudden disappearance of his soon-to-be victim. Hey, up here. The villain's eyes looked up, and he saw Izuku and Kota flying above him. Your quirk is so cool, Izuku told him. It's such a shame you're a villain. Yeah, it's really interesting. What do you think will happen if we zap him with lightning? Kota quipped. Zap. Before the sludge villain could flee, Kota extended his finger and shot the villain with lightning. BRRAGRAHGAFFF. The villain's body squirmed around frantically as the electricity filled his body and caused him to completely lose control. Once Kota was finished, the villain melted into a pile of sludge on the ground. Why is he gonna be okay? Izuku asked with concern on his face. Oh, the villain groaned. He's fine, Kota said. Eri flew up next to her friends, still wearing an unsure expression. Is it over? Hey. The three looked down as Death Arms marched up to them. Oh, it's you. How's your jaw? Kota asked smugly. Really funny. You are under arrest. Death Arms yelled at them. Kota laughed hysterically at that statement like it was the best joke he's heard in years. Really? And who's gonna arrest us? You. Last time you tried I hit you once and you got code. Ko-ai, Izuku said in a warning voice. They had all agreed that instead of using their real names, they would use the names the media had provided them, so no one could tell it was them. Let's just leave. Eri nodded in agreement, but Kota ignored them and flew down to the ground to face Death Arms. Come on, you want to arrest me, right? Try it, hero, Kota said with a vicious smirk. Giororar. Hera. Death Arms charged forward and tried to punch Kota, only for the vigilante to seemingly vanish. Huh, too slow. Death Arms turned around and saw Kota standing behind him with his fingers raised. Before the hero could react, Kota flicked the villain in the forehead, sending him flying a few feet back, landing on his butt. GGRR. Death Arms took a moment to recover. There was blood leaking down from where Kota had flicked him, and he was absolutely pissed. Kota taunted the hero, motioning for him to come at him. Death Arms got up and ran at Kota, but before he could get close, a bolt of lightning struck the floor right in front of him, forcing the hero to stop in his track and look up at Izuku, who had slung the lightning. That's enough, Izuku said, with a seriously upset expression on his face. TCH, I was just messing around. Kota crossed his arms in an annoyed manner. You're embarrassing someone, Izuku told him, and we can't waste our time anyway. Remember, Kota scowled because he knew Izuku was right. They couldn't use their powers all day. And wasting it like this, even if it was fun, was wasteful. Fine. The blue champion took to the sky, and in a blur, he was gone. Hey, come back here. Death Arms shouted at the empty sky. Sorry about him. Izuku quickly apologized, before following his friend. Sorry, Eri said quietly, before also following the two. A few days later, the prisoner has escaped. The prisoner has escaped. AHHH, shouted a policeman, right before his arm was cut off by an elongated tooth blade. On the bridge of Tartarus in the dead of night, a convoy transporting the dangerous criminal Moonfish was under siege by that exact same villain. Whoever had been in charge of securing the muzzle on the villain had done a terrible job, and after the truck he was in hit a slight bump, it became loose enough for Moonfish to use his quirk to free himself and start attacking the guards. 2 guards had been killed and many others had been injured, with one losing an arm. The men did their best, shooting at him in an attempt to take him down, but the villain defended himself by using his teeth as a shield. Flesh. Moonfish sent out one of his teeth, and it shot right towards one of the guard's chest, and right as it was about to impale that guard, crack, it suddenly broke against the chest of Izuku, who had flown in between the guard and the attack. Before Moonfish could do anything else, he was zapped by lighting from above, courtesy of Kota. After a few moments, Kota ended his attack, and Moonfish fell onto the van, knocked out. Done. Kota turned his attention towards the guards. Freeze. Some of the guards aimed their weapons at Izuku and Kota, as well as Eri, who was flying behind Kota, while some other guards took to trying to attend to their injured. Are you kidding me? Kota asked, disgusted that they would prioritize trying to arrest them, after they just saved their lives, over helping the injured. One of you is missing an arm. No time to waste. Let's get them to a hospital. Izuku quickly scooped up the guard missing his arm and flew as fast as he could to the nearest hospital. The other 2 followed his example and picked up as many injured as they could and flew them over to the hospital. A week later, at a beach, AHHH, help me, shouted a child, as he flailed around in the water, trying not to drown. My baby, shouted the mother of the child back on the shore. Someone help him. Swoosh. Before anyone could do anything, a blue blur sped past them, right at the child. The blur swooped past the child, and the child disappeared, before reappearing in his mother's arms. My baby. The mother quickly got over her shock and hugged her son. You're welcome, said Kota as he flew above all the beachgoers. Get out of here, shouted one woman. What? Kota shouted in shock. Dirty vigilante. You're no better than the villains, shouted a man. Kota glared at the beachgoers, who continued to shout things at him before finally taking his leave. A week and a half later, Yuri looked at the remains of a recently collapsed building. This building had been the victim of a villain attack and had been heavily populated up until a few moments ago. Fortunately, while Izuku and Kota took care of the villain, she rescued the dozens of people inside the building. Yuri didn't like fighting all that much, so she would typically leave that up to Izuku and Kota if she could help it, while she would rescue the people. As Yuri was standing looking at the ruins of what once was people's homes, the press ran up behind her with their cameras and microphones. Marvel Aka, over here. Yuri turned around and was immediately overwhelmed, as the press swarmed her, surrounding her completely and shoving cameras and microphones in her face. Marvel Aka, why did you become a vigilante? Is it because you don't respect the law or pro-heroes? What? And no, Yuri answered quietly, trying to back away only to bump into another reporter. Where did you and your siblings get your powers? Are you using quirk-enhancing drugs? Yuri, despite having the speed of Mercury, couldn't answer the questions faster than they were being asked. Why do you and your siblings look nothing alike? Did your mother or father have multiple affairs? Yuri didn't even know what that meant. But all this overwhelming attention was starting to cause her to tear up. Do you know how irresponsible your actions are? Or do you not care? As the reporters kept asking questions, Yuri started to cry. Krakoom. Large bolts of lightning stuck all around the reports, causing them to stop and cower in fear, and looking up they could see a very upset Kota and Izuku, with lightning brimming from their eyes. Get away from her. Now, Kota said, the words are else unsaid, but implied. Quickly the press dispersed, and Yuri flew into the air next to the two of them. Scum, couldn't they see she was crying? Kota muttered to himself, trying to make sure the other two couldn't hear him. Are you okay, Yuri? Izuku asked her. Yuri sniffed and tried to wipe the tears out of her eyes. I'm sorry. Izuku was about to tell her not to apologize, but Kota spoke first. Why didn't you just fly away? Kota asked her. Yuri didn't know how to say she got overwhelmed. Izuku glared at his friend for his insensitivity. Kota didn't say another word, and instead, he just flew away. 2 weeks later, Krakoom. Ikai City was on fire. Abnormally powerful bolts of lightning had been striking the city, courtesy of the villain 9. While their leader sent down his fury from above, his subordinates, Slice, Mummy, and Chimera, wreaked havoc on the ground. This city will be a statement, a claim to my rule, 9 said as he stood on top of a building. Well, that rule's not gonna last very long, I'll tell you that. 9's eyes widened, and he quickly turned around to see Kota casually standing behind him. A marvel, 9 instantly recognized him. I suppose you've come to stop me. You should be joining me. You have incredible power, and yet you use it for minor tasks and party tricks. You could rule with that power. You and your siblings. You should JHHHCK. Before 9 could finish talking, Kota punched him in the gut, making the villain spit out blood all over Kota's arm before passing out from the force. Gross. Kota shook all the blood off his arm. Why do villains always have to give such long speeches? It's so annoying. Meanwhile, on the ground people were running away from the combined force of Slice and Mummy. Slice shot out pieces of her hair at buildings, causing massive destruction around her, while Mummy wrapped whatever he could find up in his bandages. Cars, vending machines, and other things became puppets that would terrorize the people. One man was running away from one of Mummy's puppets when he tripped over a rock. The man screamed as the puppet came upon him, ready to attack. Zap! A bolt of lightning came flying, hitting the puppet so hard it pierced it, and went right through its body, causing it to explode. Mummy and Slice stopped their attack and looked where the lightning came from and saw Yuri flying towards them. Hi, Yuri greeted. See, could you stop attacking the city, please? The two villains looked at each other for a moment as if asking, is she serious, before turning back to Yuri and attacking her. Slice shot out sharpened strands of her hair at her, but this only served to irritate Yuri as the strands bounced off her skin. Oh, please stop. Yuri raised her hands over her face to defend herself and shot some lighting down at Slice. The villain couldn't defend herself in time and was hit dead center. She flew back into a car which caved in from the force of impact. Slice. Mummy looked at his teammate and saw she was unconscious, before looking back at Yuri. I'm sorry, please surrender. Yuri pleaded. Never. Mummy shouted with indignation, before getting blasted by a bolt of lightning into unconsciousness. Sorry. Yuri apologized to no one in particular. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Chimera breathed fire on a car, causing it to explode. So you have super strength, durability, and you can breathe fire. Chimera stopped rampaging for a moment and looked up to see Izuku flying down towards him, eventually meeting him at eye level a few feet away. Why is it that so many villains have cool quirks? Izuku asked his foe. Cause not everyone thinks our quirks are cool. Chimera barked back. I'm what most people would call a monster, an abomination that should have never been born. Izuku finished the villain's sentence, much to Chimera's surprise. I see, you were hurt and blamed for something that was never your fault. Betrayed by people you thought you could trust. I understand. Izuku's tone took a somber tone, as pain flashed in his eyes, telling Chimera that he wasn't lying. So you know then you should join us. You don't owe them anything. The strong should rule over the weak, Chimera preached. Izuku shook his head and sighed. Being hurt doesn't mean you can hurt people. It's not right. Gyorrar. It's not right that they call me a monster even when I haven't done a thing. Who cares about what's right? It's an unfair world, and we have the power to make it ours. Chimera argued. Just because you can, doesn't mean you should. Izuku looked at Chimera somberly. I'm sorry for what you've been through, but if you don't stop, I will take you down. Gyorrar. Try it. Chimera was done talking, and let out a fire breath attack directly at Izuku. Izuku took the attack, not being affected by it in the slightest. The green vigilante charged through the flames at irrecoverable speeds, stopping right in front of Chimera, before giving his chest a hard shove with his palm. Chimera was sent flying back, blood leaking from his maw as he flew through the air, eventually landing half a mile away from where Izuku and shoved him, completely unconscious. Izuku sighed. What a waste. As Izuku lamented the waste of such a cool and powerful quirk, Kota and Eri flew down beside him. Are we done here? Kota asked impatiently. We should be, Izuku said. He looked to Eri to see if she was ready to leave, and he noticed that she was staring at something behind them. What are you looking at? Eri didn't look at him, and wore an unsure and slightly scared expression on her face as she said, Why do they look so scared? Izuku and Kota looked closer at the direction Eri was staring at, and they could see people hiding from them. Why are they hiding? Eri asked her two friends. Izuku sighed. Because we're vigilantes. We're technically criminals. Even if we did just save their whole stinkin' city, Kota growled bitterly, before turning away. Come on, we're done wasting our time with these cowards. Kota flew away. But Eri and Izuku stayed behind, looking at the terrified people they just saved. Are we doing the right thing? Eri turned to Izuku and asked. Of course, Izuku answered with little hesitation. If we didn't help then a lot of people would have died. Eri didn't respond, but the feeling of unease remained with her. The tension was thick in the police briefing room, as the heroes who sat there were very high profile. Hawks, Best Jeanist, Crust, Eraserhead, Nezu, Mirko, Kamui Woods, Death Arms, Rikyu, Fat Gum, and even Endeavor. After seeing the other heroes around them, the pros knew exactly what they were here for. The Marvels. They all knew that they'd have to deal with them sooner than later. Not that most of the heroes here were looking forward to it. Instead of a member of the police, the one leading the briefing was Sir Night-Eye. Which made sense, seeing as the Marvel's debut was in getting rid of villains he had been trying to apprehend for years. Now, I'm sure you've all ascertained the reason as to why we've called you, Night-Eye said while pushing up his glasses. Mirko was the first to answer. Yeah, to take care of those flying assholes who think they can do whatever they want. Hey now, there's no need to use such harsh language. The Marvels have done some incredible things, even if it's on the wrong side of the law. Crust didn't hate the Marvels and actually appreciated a lot of what they did. It saddened him knowing they would have to take them in. They're vigilantes. What they've done beyond that is irrelevant. Endeavor spoke up. Our job is to take them in, as simple as that. While I don't think it's going to be anything resembling simple, Endeavor is right. Night-Eye pulled a remote from his pocket and pressed a button, and a projector shot an image of the Marvels onto the wall in front of everyone. To go over the basics, the Marvels are a 3-person vigilante team consisting of 2 males and 1 female. Marvel Midori, Marvel AI, and Marvel Aka. Night-Eye pressed another button, and the image switched to them fighting Overhaul in his monster form. They first appeared fighting Kai Chisaki after he presumably used his quirk to turn himself into this monster. Presumably, they had been fighting the Yakuza for quite some time inside the building, as some lightning bolts had been spotted striking the area by some nearby civilians. Although strangely, not only did the lightning bolts appear out of the clear sky and do no damage to the areas they touched, but also people more than a mile away claimed to have neither heard nor seen any lightning. Do you think it was some kind of proximity-based illusion? Aizawa asked. That's the only thing I can think of. That makes sense, but why? Nezu asked in return. They've shown the ability to shoot very real lightning, so why would they create fake lighting? We've also never seen them display any other illusion-based abilities in the past. Maybe we have and we just didn't know. Hawks half joked. Ugh, fucking great. Just what those guys need. Fucking illusions. Mirko complained. Putting that aside for the moment, the abilities we know the Marvels to have are superhuman strength, speed, durability, and reflexes, as well as the ability to fly and shoot blasts of electricity, Night-Eye stated, switching through slides that showed the Marvels using their powers. They also may have the ability to teleport, although this was only seen in their battle against Overhaul. Night Eye showed a video that was obviously taken on someone's phone of a very, very far away Kota about to finish off Overhaul, only to get struck by lightning and seemingly disappear. Then it showed Eri after defeating Overhaul, flying in the air only to get struck by lightning and disappear. I'm not sure what that was. Nezu spoke his thoughts, gaining everyone's attention. Looking at it at a first glance, one could think that the Marvels had teleported away. However, with context, that theory falls apart. Firstly, why would AI choose to teleport away at that moment? He was clearly about to use a powerful attack on Overhaul and no reason to leave the battle. Marvel Aka makes more sense, as the battle was over and they would have left afterward. However, why would Marvel Midori not do the same thing? And of course, the biggest question of all, if they could teleport, why not do it more often? If this is teleportation, then I don't think that the Marvels were the ones controlling it. Or more likely, Night Eye, do you have the full video of this encounter? Of course, Night Eye responded. Then could you go to the part where Marvel AI disappeared? Nezu asked. Night Eye gave a quick nod and then did just that. After a few moments, the video played, showing AI disappearing, and then Midori flying towards where AI had been and then leaving the fight. There, you can see Marvel Midori quickly flying to AI's location and then leaving. Nezu pointed out. Why? Oh, will you stop stringing us along and tell us what the hell you're thinking? Mirko shouted, entirely too impatient for Nezu's games. I was getting to that. Very soon after this happened, Marvel Aka stopped evacuating civilians, and then when the Marvels reappeared in the fight, Aka unleashed her unknown attack on Overhaul and ended the fight. Nezu continued to set up his theory. Please fast forward to that, please. Night Eye fast forwarded to Aka killing Overhaul and then getting struck by lightning and disappearing, and then showing Midori zipping over to her location, back down to where they'd come from, and then flying off away from the scene. And there's Midori's strange flight pattern. Instead of flying away from the scene of the fight instantly, he goes to Aka's location and then goes back to where they had flown out of, and then he flies away. Nezu pointed out, Sir Night Eye, has there been any news of the Marvels mentioning some kind of power or time limit? There have been reports of Marvel Midori saying things like, we don't have time for this, we can't waste time on this, don't waste your power like this, as well as other things of this nature to Marvel AI when he starts to mess around. Of course, it could be shrugged off as him not wishing to waste time, but the serious nature in which he says this implies it's more of a warning. Night Eye explained. The heroes perked up. A weakness for the invincible Marvel. Fucking great. Death Arms celebrated. A potential weakness, it's only a theory. Nezu reminded them. And speaking of theories, I have one of my own. You see, judging by the evidence put in front of us, I theorize that the Marvel's quirks are transformation quirks. Transformation quirks. Fat Gum repeated. You mean that what we see is only a powered-up state of theirs? That would make sense. None of them wear a mask, and yet we have been completely unable to figure out their identities. Endeavor added. And I think I see where Nezu was going with this, Ryukyu said. When Marvel AI and Aka were struck by lightning, they weren't disappearing, they just became harder to see. It's possible outside of their transformations they could be significantly smaller, and at that range and at night, it would be practically impossible to see them. And once they had been forced out of their transformations, Marvel Midori had to go and catch them and then bring them away from the fight, which explains their actions. It would also explain why they used the unknown attack and killed Overhaul, Aizawa added. The Marvels have been very careful not to kill anyone since this incident, so why now? And why would they use this unknown attack only this one time? The answer is because they were desperate. They were running low on either time or power, so Marvel Aka used her most powerful ability to end the fight before they all were forced out of their transformations. Murmurs rang among the pros as they seemed to agree on this theory altogether. But that leaves the question, is this a time limit or a power depletion limit? Genist asked. While I don't think we have enough evidence to say anything definitively, I would say it's more likely a power limit, Nezu said. The times in which the Marvels are active seem to be very inconsistent. And Marvel Midori tends to be more active than the other two, so it's possible that he is the best out of the three at conserving his energy. And what we've seen of the trio supports this. So it's possible that they have a limited amount of energy they can use before they transform back into a less powerful, if not completely powerless state. Night Eye laid out all the threads together, making it into one solid theory. We'll have to keep that in mind. Do you have any more theories, Nezu? Not at the moment, no. Nezu shook his head. Then let us move on, Night Eye said, getting slides back to where he wanted them to be. Now, the last ability of theirs you need to look out for is the most dangerous one, as well as the most unknown. And that is the power Aka used on Overhaul to end the fight. The video of Aka flying to Overhaul, there being a bright flash of light, and then Overhaul, a monster the size of a skyscraper, was gone without a trace. Lesser heroes would find this terrifying. These heroes just found it intimidating. We have no clue what happened here, at all. When we went to instigate the scene, there was absolutely nothing left of Overhaul. Nothing. He just vanished without a trace. Night Eye tried his hardest to emphasize both how mysterious and dangerous this ability was. And it seemed to have worked, as some of the heroes looked slightly unnerved. As of now, we have 5 theories about how this could have been accomplished. 2 unlikely ones and 3 more likely ones. So all we can do is theorize about this. Whatever it is, it's extremely dangerous. Aizawa concluded. Starting with the 2 unlikely ones first is that it was all an illusion and the Marvels were attempting to trick people into thinking positively of them by fighting a fake monster. Given that Kai Chisaki was a real person who is currently missing, presumed dead, and that the destruction caused by Chisaki was very real, and that the Marvels have shown they are willing and capable of saving people from villains, this is unlikely. Night Eye said. The second unlikely theory is that they do in fact have a teleportation ability, and simply teleported Chisaki away. However, unless she teleported him very far away, then Chisaki definitely would have been noticed given his size. And of course, this theory would also bring up another question. That being, why wouldn't they do that more often? Okay, mind telling us the theories that might actually be true? Mirko asked impatiently. I was getting to that. The first more plausible theory is that she has the ability to manipulate matter. And the reason Chisaki disappeared into thin air is because he was turned into thin air. Night Eye explained. It's possible Akka may not have full control over this ability, as therefore prefers not to use it unless it's an emergency. So basically it would pressure them hard enough they might turn us all into fucking air. Death Arms could feel his frustration growing. What's worse is the possible lack of control of something like that. Powerful quirks plus lack of control never ends well. Eraserhead pointed out. Well, the theories don't get much more comforting from here. The last 2 theories both involve a form of chronokinesis. The first of the 2 is that she actually teleported him through time, either to the distant past or the future. The second is that rather than sending Overhaul through time, she sent time through Overhaul. In other words, she rewound Overhaul's body back to the point when he didn't exist or was a sperm cell. Night Eye explained. You're right, it didn't get any more comforting. Fat Gum was confident his fat could take a lot of things. Getting erased from existence was not one of them. Oh yeah, great. But the better question here isn't what it is, it's how do we dodge it? Hawks asked. Because I don't know about the rest of you, but I would really like to not be insta-killed if they feel like they're in danger. Well, as stated, we have no real idea of what this attack is. So given our current knowledge, we have 2 methods of avoiding this attack. 1, don't let them use it, and 2, don't fight them. Night Eye suggested. We suggest the latter. Endeavor gave Night Eye a scathing glare. Are you suggesting that we simply let them do as they please without arresting them? What we are suggesting is that you all sit back and let All Might handle this. Night Eye didn't need to see the future to know that this statement would cause more than a little outrage. Mirko and Death Arms looked like he had just personally insulted them. However, before anyone could complain, Nezu spoke up. That would be for the best. Several glares, confused looks, and eyebrow raises were thrown Nezu's way. The mouse bear principal quickly explained himself. I've been looking into the Marvels since they arrived. I've been meticulous in calculating the limits of their abilities and their overall versatility, and I can confidently say that no single hero other than All Might could beat all 3 of them. Even fighting just one of them, it's unlikely that even Endeavor could win. And that's assuming they actually stay and fight, instead of just flying away. Nezu explained. And even if every high-ranking hero, aside from All Might, teamed up to fight the 3, it still would not guarantee victory, and the sheer amount of property damage and casualties of both heroes and civilians is enough for us to say, it's not worth it. They're not causing enough of a problem for us to justify throwing an army of heroes and destroying the city to take them in, especially when we don't know for sure if that would work. Let us take a look back at how well you've performed against the Marvels at this point. Night Eye said as he pressed another button on his remote. The projection changed to a video of a boy running into the street, about to get hit by a car, only to get saved by Eri, flying in and swooping up the kid and bringing him back to the sidewalk. Eri quickly tried to fly away, but she didn't get more than a few feet away when Ryukyu swooped down in her dragon form and slammed her to the ground with her massive claws. However, Eri was only trapped in the dragon hero's claw for a few seconds, before she immediately burst out, flying out of her clutches and away from the dragoness so fast that she could never hope to catch up. Ryukyu gave an embarrassed blush at the sight of her failure being projected for everyone to see. The next video was another one of Eri. This time she had just finished zapping a villain into unconsciousness and was flying over his body. She was then kicked away by an arriving Mirko. This actually seemed to do some small damage to Eri, as she was knocked across the street. Mirko jumped over Eri and was about to land an axe kick on her while she was down when she was suddenly blasted with lightning by a very pissed-off Kota. Mirko went flying back and crashed into a car, giving the 2 Marvels a chance to escape. Mirko grit his teeth and growled at the video. Another video played, showing Death Arms getting taken on a stretcher after his first encounter with the Marvels. And then another video of Kota playing around with him before flicking him away. Death Arms crushed an apple he was eating as the pure embarrassment he suffered was displayed. A few more videos played showing various heroes in the room getting absolutely humiliated by Eri and Kota, although strangely enough, Izuku didn't appear in any of the videos. After a few minutes, Night Eye pressed another button and the videos stopped. So as you can see, none of you stand any actual chance of stopping them. Out of everyone in this room, only about 3 of you are even capable of doing any significant damage to them. What about Eraserhead and Genist? Can't they do anything? Hawks asked. I've already tried using my quirk on them. It doesn't work. Eraserhead answered curtly. The same goes for me. Whatever those outfits are made of, it isn't any sort of fiber. Best Genist revealed. Wait, if they aren't fibers, then what the heck is it? Fat Gum asked, genuinely curious. We don't know, and we have bigger things to worry about than what their outfits are made of. Night Eye dismissed. What we've brought you here to tell you is that you shouldn't engage the Marvels for the time being, unless we can discover something useful that we could use against them. So we're just supposed to do nothing? Kamui Woods asked. Not necessarily. If my theory is correct, then if we could discover their identities, we could capture them before they get the chance to transform. Nezu told them, meaning that as of right now, everyone's only priority in terms of the Marvels should be finding out their identities. A few heroes, namely Mirko, Death Arms, and Endeavor, seemed very unhappy with this news, but others were more understanding. Do we have any clues? Lead. Anything? Crust asked. Surely we must have something. Not much. Night Eye sighed. As I've said, we've been unable to successfully identify them using facial recognition, however we did get something out of it. Night Eye pressed another button, and it switched a picture of 2 people, one being Kota in his champion form, and another being his father, Hasu Izumi. Both of them looked basically identical. The person on the left is Marvel AI, and the person on the right is Hasu Izumi, a member of the former hero duo, Water Hose. Night Eye explained. I'm guessing you noticed a resemblance. Mirko slammed her fist down on a table and held an outraged expression as she pointed at the projection. Wait 1 fucking minute. So you mean we did find out who he was? And he was a fucking hero this whole time? Obviously not if he said we haven't been able to identify them. Aizawa pointed out. Yes, seeing as Hasu Izumi is dead along with his wife, Night Eye explained. Both were killed by the villain Muscular while they helped civilians evacuate the area. May they rest in peace. Crush said quietly. Did they have a kid or something? A brother? Fat Gum asked. They did have a son. Kota Izumi. Night Eye pressed a button, and the projection now showed Kota, although he was much younger as the picture was taken before he ran away. However, it's unlikely to be him, as he would be around 7 right now and is also most likely dead. That caused some alarm amongst the heroes. What do you mean, most likely dead? Kamui asked. Kota Izumi, after the death of his parents, was given to the only remaining family we know of, the cousin of Misu Izumi, Shino Sasaki, also known as the hero Mandalay of the Wild Pussy Cats. However, after only staying with them a few months, he ran away. Night Eye explained. Given that this was a few years ago and he hasn't been seen since, it's a fairly safe assumption that he died on the street. Fuss sniffled and let out a tear for the poor boy. First the parents, and then the son. That poor family. So it's just a coincidence? Aizawa asked. Perhaps, however, what's keeping me from writing this off as a mere coincidence is the fact that AI has been asking about the villain, Muscular. Night Eye explained, before showing another video. Kota stood over a villain who had been knocked to the ground, looming over him threateningly with his hands glowing with electricity. Where is Muscular? Who? The villain asked, fearing for his life. The video cut off, but it was safe to assume nothing pleasant happened to that villain. From this, we can indicate that there is most likely some connection between Marvel AI and Hasu Izumi. Night Eye explained. Although we don't know what that connection is, it's possible he's a secret brother of his, although we don't know why he would be a secret. Not to mention, we would also have to explain his quirk, which is unlike anything in the Izumi family, as well as it being shared by 2 people who look nothing like Hasu or anyone in the known Izumi family. Do we have anything on Midori or Aka? Aizawa asked. No, those 2 we have nothing on. All we have about those 2 are guesses. Night Eye said. HMPH. Endeavor got up, and without any explanation, started walking to the door. And where exactly do you think you're going? Night Eye asked. This is a waste of time. Endeavor stated simply. If the point of this was to tell us not to engage the Marvels, you could have done that in a few seconds. And figuring out their identities is pointless. And how so? Eraserhead asked. Because we'll figure it out when All Might takes them in. Endeavor answered. If All Might is being sent to capture them, then there's no point in us getting involved. I see, and what if All Might fails to capture them? Nezu asked. Once again, many puzzled looks were thrown Nezu's way, as if the heroes were concerned that he'd lost his mind. Nezu simply shook his head. All Might can't fix all our problems. He's human, just as we are, and as such he is subject to human error. The Marvels are unlike any vigilantes we've seen before. It would be foolish of us to underestimate them. There were a few moments of silence as Nezu let that information sink in. Bah, all this talk All Might and he's not even here, Mirko pointed out. Where the hell is he? Meanwhile, with All Might, Toshinori Yagi walked through the police station in his true, skinny form, holding 2 cups of coffee. He walked over to an office he was more than familiar with and knocked on the door. "Come in," said the voice of Detective Naomasa. All Might pushed the door open and walked into Naomasa's office and saw the man himself looking up at him from his desk. "Ah, Toshinori, you're here. And you brought coffee," Naomasa said with a smile on his face. "Of course, I know how tiresome detective work can be after all." All Might took his seat across from Naomasa and handed his friend the second coffee. The two took long sips of their drinks before coming back up for air. And with that out of way, it was time to get to business. "I'm assuming you know why I called you here?" Naomasa asked, leaning down to pull something out of his desk. "It's about the marvels, right?" All Might asked. "Sorry, I haven't been able to capture them yet. I just haven't run into them during my patrols, and well, I can't much after my patrols." "I'm aware, and I don't think that's a coincidence," Naomasa told his friend. "Looking at the times Midori and the other marvels have been active, they've only ever been active after your patrols have ended." All Might's sunken eyes widened. "You don't think they know about my time limit, do you?" "Maybe. Well, I think it's unlikely that it's a coincidence. It's possible that they've just taken notice of the fact that you're only active for a certain amount of time per day," Naomasa explained. "However, it is still possible they know about your time limit. And if that's the case, given their quirks, I think you know who might be involved." All for one, All Might didn't like to even think that that villain could still be alive. But he couldn't deny the possibility after seeing the power the Marvels display. "Right now we have 2 theories that connect All for One and the Marvels," Naomasa explained. "The first one is that they work for All for One, and they act as vigilantes to decrease people's faith in heroes and cause chaos. Or, they were small-time vigilantes that All for One gave power to but doesn't have full control. Again, this would most likely be done to decrease people's faith in heroes and cause chaos. So either they're pawns of All for One or unknowing pawns of All for One." All Might summarized. "I'd like to think it's the latter or neither. Well, those are the only 2 theories we have right now on the origin of their power. If All for One isn't behind it, then there is someone very dangerous behind the scenes that we don't know about." Naomasa honestly didn't know which one was scarier, All for One or a completely unknown enemy that could bestow power of this level on people. "But regardless, we need you to bring them in. Meaning we'll need you to conserve your power until they make an appearance." All Might nodded. "Hopefully won't take too long. People would notice if I didn't go on my patrols for a while." "Well, if they really are avoiding you, then it might take longer than we'd like," Naomasa speculated. "But let's just hope that's not the case." "Right." All Might took another sip of his coffee. All Might knew what he needed to do. Even putting aside the fact that they were vigilantes, their possible connection to All for One was enough reason for All Might to prioritize taking them down. But they'd find out soon enough if they had any connection to that man. Things had been rather dull for once. What would normally happen is that Eri and Kota would wait for Izuku to tell them when they would go on patrol. Izuku stressed the importance of this because Izuku had spent a lot of time figuring out when heroes like Endeavor and All Might went on patrol, and where they went on patrol, so they knew how to avoid them. However, All Might hadn't been patrolling, and as such, Izuku hadn't been patrolling, which meant he, Eri, and Kota had just been staying put. Which, overall, Eri was fine with, but Kota was definitely not. The 3 of them were currently sitting on the sofa, with their eyes glued to the TV, as it played the news. Another day with no sight of the symbol of peace. All Might hasn't been seen for the past 3 days, which is very abnormal for the symbol of peace, although it is possible that he is simply taking a well-deserved break. The newswoman reported. Izuku gave the TV a frustrated pout. "I don't understand. All Might doesn't really take breaks like this, at least not unannounced. Maybe he just got tired," Eri suggested. "Nua, All Might never get tired," Izuku argued. "There has to be some kind of reason." "Giarararararar," Kota growled in annoyance. "Speaking of disappearances, the Marvels have also not been seen for the last 3 days. Normally at least Marvel Midori shows up a few times a day, but all 3 of the Marvels have been unseen for the last 3 days. The newswoman reported. "It seems that even they have been spooked by the prospect of All Might popping out at any time. As they should. The symbol of peace would never allow these agents of chaos to." PWWWM. Kota had snatched the remote from Izuku and turned the TV off. "Agents of chaos. We've been saving people, non-stop, and this is the thanks we get," Kota shouted, throwing the remote away, before glaring at Izuku. "And why the hell are we just staying here? We should be out there, kicking villain ass and looking for muscular." Izuku sighed. "First, language. Second, we need to wait until All Might finishes his patrol. All Might is almost never active after his patrol. All Might's patrols last somewhere between 2.5 and 3 hours. If we want to avoid having to fight him, then we have to wait until after then." How does work? If All Might wanted to fight us after his patrol, then he'd just do it. Kota pointed out. It's not like he has a time limit. Izuku frowned and pulled out a notebook. All Might is never active after his patrols. Never. I don't know why, but it's the truth. Why do you think he never stepped in to fight all the villains we took down? Or to take us down? It's because it was after his patrol. Also weirdly, All Might used to step in all the time. At all times of the day. If he saw trouble, he would step in. But then he stopped being active after his patrols. And as time went on, his patrols got shorter and shorter. Maybe he's just getting old, Kota suggested sarcastically while rolling his eyes at Izuku's blatant hero worship. No, All Might looks, well, he doesn't look as young as he used to, but he still looks really young. Izuku defended his hero as if he had taken personal offense to Kota's suggestion. And he's still super strong. Probably not as strong as us. Kota scowled at Izuku. And why are we even avoiding him? We're strong, and there are 3 of us. I bet we could kick his ass. Kota, it's All Might. All Might, the symbol of peace. The man who lowered the crime rate of Japan to a single digit. We wouldn't stand a chance. Izuku argued, looking at Kota as if he'd gone mad. You don't know that. Just because you're a year older than me doesn't mean you're smarter. Kota was actually shouting at Izuku now, making her flinched as she sunk into the couch. Why do you want to go out so badly? You keep saying that what we're doing is lame and that people don't like us, so why do you want to keep doing it? Izuku wasn't shouting, but he had definitely raised his voice to a level that made her uncomfortable. Because we're supposed to be finding muscular, and we haven't found any clues. Kota shouted. His fist was balled up, and he was now unleashing anger and frustration that had been building up for a long, long time. None of the villains we fought knew anything about him. All of it was just a waste of time. Kota, we saved lives, Izuku pointed out. And they hate us for it? Kota argued. Tears were begging to appear in the corner of Eri's eyes. She hated when Kota and Izuku butted heads. But this was worse than anything that had happened before. She wanted to stop it, say something, do something. But she was afraid. What if when she spoke up, all that anger directed towards her? And so she just sat there, curling up into a ball and hoping that the yelling would stop soon. It's not about being liked, Kota. It's about helping people. Izuku continued to argue. No, to you it's about helping people. No one else here cares about that hero crap. Stop wrapping us up in your stupid dream. Kota shouted, his face red from anger. In fact, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I don't need to be a stupid hero. And I don't need you. With that, Kota hopped off the couch and ran for the door, kicking it open and running away. SHAZAM! Izuku and Eri heard Kota shout from the hallway, followed by a lightning strike and the sound of winds kicking up as Kota presumably flew away. Wait, Eri was about to chase after him, but she was stopped by Izuku, who put his hand on her shoulder. Don't. He just needs time to cool down. He'll come back, Izuku reassured her. This isn't the first time this has happened. Eri gave Izuku a confused and unsure look. Part of her wanted to go and catch Kota right now and beg him not to leave. But on top of knowing that he was probably long gone by now, she also trusted that what Izuku said was true. After all, he never lied to her before. But one thing was still bothering her. This has happened before, Eri asked him. Izuku nodded solemnly and sighed. Me and Kota met a while ago. He was trying to steal money from some lady's purse while she wasn't looking, and I stopped him and showed him he could have just begged for it instead. The lady pitied us and gave us some money so we could buy food. After that, we just stayed together. But we don't agree about a lot of stuff, heroes especially. We'd argue and get mad and leave, but we'd always end up back together eventually, and would forgive each other. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's lonely, Eri suggested. She knew how painful it was to be alone. Stuck for years by herself in Overhaul's lair. She would have done anything for some company that didn't hate, at least. Izuku looked at Eri with a thoughtful expression. That maybe you're right. But Eri, do you think Kota was right? Am I forcing my dream on you? What do you mean? Eri was confused. So far neither Kota nor Izuku had ever forced her to do something. At least not like Overhaul did. Do you not want to keep doing this? Going around saving people? Izuku asked her seriously. Eri was scared to answer that. Part of her just wanted to lie and say no, in fear of disappointing Izuku. But the look in his eye, it told her that that would be a mistake. I don't know. I like helping people. It feels good. But they say such mean things about us. I don't understand why. If we're helping people, why do they hate us? Aren't we doing a good thing? Why is being a vigilante illegal? Now it was Izuku's turn to think about his answer, and trust that he'd thought long and hard about that. He'd even done it in his transformed state to see if the wisdom of Solomon could help him out. He'd read books about it at the library, and studied about it on the computers, again at the library. Vigilantes can sometimes be good but also bad, Izuku explained. The reason why they're illegal is because they're mostly untrained. And so they don't know the best way to stop villains or save people without hurting anyone else. Izuku searched his memories for an example to simplify his explanation. One time, there was a vigilante called the Man of Steel. who had a powerful strength-enhancing quirk. He tried to save a bunch of people by fighting some villains that were attacking, but since he had no training, he ended up destroying half the city and killed hundreds of people during the fight. And later he was killed because he made a stupid mistake. And another vigilante could grow to the size of a building, and he ended up hurting a lot more people than the villain. Incidents like that were extremely common back when vigilantes had been more prominent. No one was born knowing how to use their quirks, and without taking the time to learn and be taught how to properly utilize your abilities. The casualties that came from widespread vigilantism numbered in the hundreds of thousands and was the main reason for the modern-day hatred of vigilantes. Some vigilantes were good. They helped out a lot and saved a lot of people, but even they made mistakes that did a lot of damage to people and the things around them. Izuku continued. Have we hurt people? Eri knew that their powers were dangerous, and when she thought about it, it was strange she didn't remember accidentally blowing up a building with a lightning bolt or flying to a person at super speeds and killing them, or flown into a plane. Izuku shook his head. We have a cheat. You know how sometimes you feel like you should do something or that you shouldn't do something? Like if you want to throw a lightning bolt somewhere but you don't because you suddenly know that it'll hurt someone or destroy something. And you don't know how you know that. Eri nodded. She'd gotten that feeling a lot, but she hadn't thought about it too much. That's the wisdom of Solomon. Probably, Izuku didn't have definitive proof that that ability was the wisdom of Solomon, but it made sense for it to be. That's what keeps us from being like those bad vigilantes and destroying stuff and killing people. It even helps us hold back against people so we don't kill them. So good. Eri was a little confused, but overall she somewhat managed to grasp what Izuku was trying to say. Yeah, but they don't know we have that, Izuku explained. And they killed Overhaul. He didn't want to say it, but they were all responsible for murder. Not even accidental murder. But he couldn't say that. Not to Eri. So cause they don't know we won't hurt people if they're afraid of us. Things started to make a bit more sense to her. If vigilantes had accidentally caused all that damage in the past, and they were way more powerful than those vigilantes, she'd be afraid too if she was them. But why don't we just tell them about the wisdom of Solomon? Izuku shook his head. Because they wouldn't believe us. Adults don't really believe in magic. So if we told us we had a magic power that kept us from hurting people by accident, then it'd sound like a lie. That made sense to Eri. It sounded just too convenient. And she'd learned that if something was too good to be true, it most likely wasn't true. And even if they did, we've already broken a bunch of other laws, like hurting pro-heroes. Izuku once again left out the murder part. So even if we weren't vigilantes, people still wouldn't like us. Eri frowned. Izuku's explanation had cleared a few things that she'd been confused about. Beauty left her feeling kind of at a loss. Even if they stopped, they would still be wanted. They'd never be able to go anywhere in their adult forms without attracting police and the heroes. Do you regret it? Izuku asked her with a saddened look. Regret what? Eri asked. Do you remember back when we were in your old room, and we asked you if you wanted to come with us or run away? Izuku reminded her. Do you regret not running away? No, Eri answered so quickly it surprised not only Izuku but herself as well. If I ran away, I would be alone. You two are the only people who were nice to me. You saved me when no one else would. Two don't want to leave you both. Not ever. And if I left, could you have beat Overhaul? Two don't know. Izuku answered truthfully. His fist clenched over his little knees as he wore a troubled expression. Maybe I could have used enough lightning to kill him, but if that failed, then they would have died. I don't regret it at all, even if I did have to do something terrible. Eri, despite how much pain Overhaul had caused her, still couldn't find it in her to fully move past his death. The fact that she'd once again killed a person, this time knowingly, was something she had a tough time coming to grips with. Her only solace being that she did it to protect Izuku and Kota. Kota and Izuku had meant so much to her back then, and even more to her now. Flashback, some time ago. Eri and Kota were alone in the ruined mansion since Izuku had gone out to be a vigilante. Kota was at a small table he had brought writing stuff down, while Eri was just peeking at him from the couch. Eventually, she worked up the courage to ask a question. What are you writing down? A to-do list, Kota answered, not looking away from his paper. Izuku used to write them down, but things are different now that we have our powers. What's a to-do list? Eri asked him curiously. It's a list of things I need to do. Kota rolled his eyes as he started the obvious. It's raining today, so I'm gonna go to the rich neighborhoods and ask if they want me to punch the clouds away and change the weather so I can get a shit ton of money. Then I'll head to the park and see if I can get people to pay me to do some lighting tricks. Why do we need so much money? Eri asked him. Using his powers, Kota had made a substantial amount of money, which he kept in a safe he found in the trash. Despite this, Kota only really ever spent money on food and took whatever else he needed from people who didn't want them anymore or the trash. Sure, money was good and it was the reason they could have 3 full meals a day. But Eri didn't understand why they'd need so much money if they barely used any of it. Because I don't want us to suffer again, Kota muttered, just loud enough for Eri to hear him. We don't deserve to suffer again. We have power. Now maybe if we have money, won't ever have to suffer again. Kota didn't say another word, and Eri just watched him work. Most people wouldn't have found those words to be very touching, but Eri wasn't most people. After spending most of her memorable life in a place without love or care, she was able to siphon the affection from Kota's words, and it meant a lot to her. Just hearing that someone cared about her meant a lot to her. Another flashback. At some other point, Eri was back at the scene of her crime. She was back in the air, floating in the sky, looking at where Overhaul had once been. Eri. She could hear Overhaul's voice in the wind, not in any one place, but all around her, surrounding her. It was like Overhaul was in the air she breathed, his wrathful spirit choking her. You killed me. You're a monster. You've always been a monster. Eri wanted to do something. Run, hide, cry out, anything. But her body refused to listen. She was trapped in her own mind. Eri. Eri's eyes snapped open, and she shot upwards into a sitting-up position. She was hyperventilating as she looked around rapidly until her eyes landed on Izuku. It was pitch black, as it typically was in the mansion, seeing as they didn't have electricity. And they didn't want to risk using a fire. They could have used their powers to power up a light source, but they agreed that it wasn't needed, and just kept a flashlight nearby just in case. This flashlight was currently being used by Izuku, who was kneeling beside her bed, with an extremely distressed and concerned expression that could only be seen thanks to the flashlight. Why, you were having a nightmare, Izuku told her. Oh, Eri said when she managed to calm her breathing. A new feeling of guilt joined the lingering fear from the nightmare. Seeing how upset she made Izuku, she felt the hatred for herself grow and burn within her. Why? Eri tried her best to stop the tears from coming out of her eyes, but it was no use as the waterworks started flowing. Why do I cause you so much trouble? Izuku and Kota almost died for her multiple times, and if it wasn't for her, they wouldn't have become vigilantes, and Izuku could have become a hero and Kota could have done whatever Kota wanted to do. I'm sorry, Eri quietly sobbed. I'm sorry, I'm so useless. Izuku flinched after hearing that. Bad memories being brought back to the surface. Useless, worthless little shit. You should have never been born. As if he still held the speed of Mercury in his child form, Izuku moved forward and wrapped Eri up in a tight hug. No, Izuku shouted. The loudness and passion in which Izuku shouted that shocked Eri out of her sobbing. You are not useless. You're not a burden. You're not. Waha. Eri was taken off guard by how vehemently Izuku refuted her claims, as if calling herself useless offended him. He'd even started crying himself. I wanted to be a hero, but how could I call myself a hero if I didn't save you? Izuku cried. It was impossible for Eri not to take in Izuku's care and affection. The boy was just radiating with it, and it seeped into her, like a warmth washing over her. It was so warm and nice that she didn't know how to handle it, and she started crying again, this time onto Izuku's shoulder. And once they were done, Eri was able to fall into a dreamless sleep, free of the nightmares for now. Back in the present, Eri felt tears well up in her eyes, but she forced herself not to cry. She looked at Izuku with a nervous and desperate look. Are you sure he'll come back? Izuku summoned the most reassuring smile he could manage and gave Eri a head pat. I'm sure he will. After all, you're here too now, and I'm sure that nothing could stop him from coming back once he wants to. Not even All Might? Eri asked. Not even. Izuku paused as he thought about what Eri had just said, and then his eyes went wide with fear. Eri, we need to go. But didn't you say Eri didn't get to finish? I forgot. All still hasn't gone on his patrol. If the news sees Kota while he's transformed, All Might come and try to fight him. He won't stand a chance. Izuku jumped off the couch and ran for the door, with Eri quickly following behind him. SHAZAM. KRAKOOM. Meanwhile, with Kota. Kota wished he had eaten before he left. While he was immune to hunger in his champion form, it lowered his, what did Izuku call it, mana pool. It lowered his mana pool, which was the amount of power they could use before being forced to transform back. Izuku had told them that the state of their normal bodies would affect their mana pool. If they were hungry or tired or injured, then their mana pool would be lowered. Izuku had even theorized that exercising would increase their mana pool, although they hadn't had time to test this result. And while Kota had plenty of energy, he thought it'd be better to eat now than later. So here he was, back in another convenience store. This time he actually intended to buy something with the money he kept on his person, rather than attempting to steal something. Although he still did have to resist the urge. The only reason I'm not stealing anything is because I don't want to get caught, Kota told himself as he pursued shelves. Not because I care about doing the right thing. Freaking Izuku. Screw him. Kota had cooled down a bit after his argument with Izuku, but he was still determined to stay angry at him. He thinks he's so smart just because he's a year older, and he's so obsessed with heroes. Kota could feel his anger grow as he thought about it. Heroes this, heroes that. He even got me to do it. Well, not anymore. I'm no hero. And that's, Kota heard a terrified scream coming from the register, and his body froze. Give me the money. Kota's eyes widened as he heard what sounded like a robbery. No matter the chances. Kota moved slowly to the end of the aisle and peeked his head out at the register to see a man holding a gun to the man at the register, who was cowering in fear of the weapon. Kota ducked back into the aisle. How did that idiot manage to rob the one store with me in it? He is so screw-aid. All Might's still out there. I could probably beat him, but it wouldn't be easy. If I beat this guy, he could show up. Please, I need this money. The cashier said. I don't care. Give it. The robber replied, holding the gun closer to the man. Kota grit his teeth. Nope, not doing it. He'll be fine. He'll give the idiot the money and he'll be fine. And even if he's not, I don't care. I'm not a hero. I don't have to save him. The money. Now, the robber shouted, his voice getting more and more aggressive. Please, the cashier said. Kota could hear them crying in desperation, and his fist clenched as he tried to hold himself back. I'm not a hero. I fucking hate heroes. I don't have to do anything. Kota tried to convince himself. I'll shoot, I fucking swear. The robber shouted, reaching the end of his patience. God damn it. SHAZAM. KRAKOOM. Both the cashier and the robber froze as a bolt of lightning struck down, hitting something in the nearby aisle. What the hell was? The robber didn't get to finish his sentence, as before he could blink there was a hand around his throat and another one ripping the gun out of his hand. The robber could only barely see the absolutely pissed face of the transformed Kota before he was suddenly outside. Kota had moved them both through the door at super speed so he could take out his anger on him without damaging the store. Kota shoved him to the floor, where the robber fell on his ass and tried to crawl away backward out of fear. The villain's face was covered, but you could see the sheer terror in his eyes as Kota loomed over him, with lightning crackling off his body and leaking from his eyes. You just had to pick this store. Kota didn't say anything else before zapping the villain with lighting and rendering him unconscious. Kota looked at the smoking unconscious body of the villain in front of him, and he didn't feel any better. TCH. Asshole. Then he heard the door to the convenience store open behind him, and when he turned around he saw the cashier exiting the store, looking at Kota. What? You gonna call me a menace too? Kota asked him bitterly. No, yeah, I just wanted to thank you, the cashier said to him, giving him a polite bow. You just saved my ass. Kota's eyes widened in shock, the surprise being very evident on his face. Look, I know it's been rough. People have been anything but grateful, but you have your fans, the man revealed. You've saved a lot of folks, and not everyone is just gonna forget that because you're vigilantes. Well, it feels like it, Kota said doubtfully, still getting over the shock of someone actually thanking him for once. Yeah, but truly, thank you. The man once again gave a bow, displaying his thankfulness. TCH. You already said that. Kota turned around and crossed his arms. Just as Kota was about to fly off, however, slam, just about 12 feet away on the road, something big slammed into the ground, kicking up dust and obscuring what or who it was. Oh, what now? Kota turned to the dust cloud, his hands crackling with electricity, ready to fight. Ah, Marvel AI, said a familiar voice. I think it's time we finally met. From the dust emerged the towering, intimidating figure. All Might. TCH. How did you find me so fast? Kota had only been transformed for a few minutes. How could news of his location have spread that quickly? Someone nearby reported a lightning strike coming out of a clear sky. All Might said as he pointed at the cloudless night sky. Damn it, this is what I get for saving people, Kota muttered to himself. All Might saw Kota get into a fighting stance, with lightning crackling around him. We don't have to fight. If you surrender and come with me, then perhaps some sort of agreement can be reached. It would be a waste for you and your siblings' talents to go to waste in a cell. All Might may have been known for his fist, but he wasn't above talking things out. Oh, for fuck's sake, will you people stop calling us siblings? Kota groaned. We're not related. If you're not related, then why do you all have the same powers? All Might squinted suspiciously at Kota, fearing the answer to his question. Kota rolled his eyes. We got them from a fucking wizard in a weird cave. AI. This needs to be taken seriously. There was a slight edge in All Might's voice. Who gave you those abilities? Why does it matter to you so much? AI returned All Might's suspicion with his own. What do you think, we got them from a villain or something? Is there a villain that can even do that? All Might analyzed Kota's words and expressions thoroughly. I can't tell if he's being serious. He seemed genuine when he asked about All for One's existence. But I can be certain. I have to be more direct in my questioning. Did you get your powers from a villain? All Might asked him. Kota rolled his eyes. Oh yeah, of course. We got our powers from a villain. That's why we go around saving people all day and freaking night. It was all a part of our evil plan. All Might was starting to get annoyed with how Kota was blowing him off. Sarcasm won't help you here. I need answers. Why does it matter? Kota asked again. You're gonna try and throw me in a cell anyway, so what's the point? Unless ... you're scared of something. Or someone ... Oh, that's rich. The Great All Might. Scared of something. Oh, Midori would be shocked. He doesn't seem like he knows about All for One. But I'm not certain. It could still be a ruse. All Might thought. And then something occurred to him. You mentioned Marvel Midori, but where is he? In Marvel Aka as well. All Might had expected to see the Marvels together, as they usually were. Yet the other two were nowhere in sight. TCH, probably still hiding away. Ever since you stopped going on your stupid patrols, Midori's been having a fucking panic attack. He was so fucking scared that we'd take one step out the hideout and you'd pop up and fight us. Kota scowled at All Might. And of course you had to prove him right, you bunny-haired asshole. That still doesn't explain why they're not with you. All Might pointed out. Because they got on my nerves. Well, Midori got on my nerves. Aka didn't do anything wrong, I guess. Kota suddenly felt a pang of guilt as he realized that when he stormed out on Izuku, he stormed out on Eri too. And she didn't deserve that. Maybe Izuku didn't deserve it either. He was right about All Might. Kota shook his head. No, so what if All Might showed up? I can still take him. So it's just issues with friends. All Might was skeptical. He had to keep his eyes peeled in case the other two decided to pop up. Friends, they are. Kota wanted to deny that Eri and Izuku were his friends, but that just felt off. Eri desperately needed friends, and to abandon her and deny their friendship just seemed cruel. And despite how much Izuku got on his nerves, he just couldn't go out and claim they weren't friends. They'd been together too long, had each other's backs for too long. Well, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. I'll give them the same offer I'm about to give you. All Might told him, surrender, and perhaps one day you can be a hero. A real one. Kota felt his anger resurface. What, just because I don't listen to some assholes in suits I'm not a hero? Not that I want to be one or anything. I just hate how you fuckers decide that just because we don't work for you that means everything we do means nothing. All Might shook his head. It's not about working for us. Most hero agencies work very little with the government, outside of reporting to them and following their rules. It's about making sure all heroes know what they're doing, and have the training to not just fight villains and save civilians, without harming the ones you're trying to protect. We haven't anyone, except the people we wanted to hurt. We really hurt them, Kota defended. Even so, if we just allow you to continue on, then that sends a message that it's okay to be a vigilante as long as you're good at it. All Might explained. Do you have any idea the amount of harm that would do? How many people would attempt to follow in your footsteps, thinking they're capable enough to do what you do, only to be proven wrong and in doing so, harming themselves and the people around them? It would be chaos. Kota actually thought about that for a moment. It was true that the world has no shortage of idiots. After all, Kota could have sworn he'd heard about a trend that involved eating soap and microwaving their phones. However, I doubt as many people would die from that as they would have if we didn't stop those weather-controlling guys or Overhaul. Do you have any idea what Overhaul was doing? Kota asked the hero indignantly. Well, no, considering that you destroyed his entire base. All Might pointed out. He was torturing a little girl, taking her blood to make a quirk erasing bullets. Do you know what he could have done with those? Or how much pain he put that girl through? Kota barked at the hero. All Might was taken aback for a moment. Quirk erasing bullets, torturing a little girl. No, I have to focus on AI for now. I'll talk about this later with Naomasa. As terrible as that may have been, there should have been better ways to handle that situation that didn't involve. All Might didn't get to finish his sentence before Kota cut him off. We tried. Midori tried so hard to follow the rules and not become a vigilante. We went to the cops. But guess what? They were working for him. They kidnapped us and tried to kill us. What were we supposed to do then? Just lie down and die and let him do whatever he wanted? Kota was getting angrier and more electricity kept crackling off his body. That would be a difficult situation to handle. In that case, I don't fault you for using your powers to defend yourselves or even save that girl. All Might told him, much to Kota's surprise. However, with your powers, I know you could have easily escaped Overhaul with the girl without having to confront him. And while I can understand having an apprehension for law enforcement after your experience with those fake policemen, do you truly believe that all law enforcement was working for him? Kota glared but didn't respond. Had you left with the girl and simply reported it to the heroes, then he likely wouldn't have transformed into that monster and caused all that property damage. All Might told him, and you wouldn't have had to kill him either. Kota was now extremely frustrated, as the hero brought up the sore spot that was Overhaul's death. What if he's right? Did you need to kill him? Did Eri have to do that? Kota shook his head and growled at the hero. No, we're stronger than all those heroes. If he gave us all that trouble, then he probably would have killed all of you. We saved you. All Might was about to speak, but Kota cut him off. No, I've had enough. You came here to take me in. Then let's do this already. And with that, Kota didn't waste another second and shot out a bolt of lightning at the hero. All Might managed to dodge the attack by dashing to the side. Alright, well, if you won't surrender. The hero burst at Kota at full sprint. Kota was taken off guard by the hero's speed and was uppercut into the air. Kota was blasted miles and miles into the air, taking a good few moments to recover and stop himself. "Aw, shit," Kota groaned as he held his head. It felt like someone had hit his child form with a sledgehammer right in the chin, and he could swear he heard bells in his head. Before he could do anything about it, All Might jumped up to him and landed a mighty blow right in the champion's face, causing him to go flying once again, this time downwards. Crash! Kota crashed into the dirt, making a large crater where he had landed. Kota wanted to vomit. The world was spinning, his head hurt like hell, and he could feel something running down his nose. He wiped whatever it was with his fingers, and then brought it up to eye level. Blood. His nose was bleeding. All Might had made him bleed. It was then Kota understood that he had made a massive mistake. Crash! All Might came down on top of Kota, holding his head down using his massive hand and keeping the rest of him down by digging his knee into his back. "Are you ready to surrender now?" All Might asked him. AGH. Eat shit. Kota's body glows with electricity. That electricity spreads to All Might. AGGHHH. All Might shouted out in pain as Kota's lighting spread throughout his entire body. All Might jumped off Kota and landed a few feet away, taking a few seconds to recover from the lightning, giving Kota time to pull himself off the ground and finally get a look at his surroundings. "We're at a park. Probably took me here to avoid damaging anything or anyone," Kota rationalized. "Wait, I need to focus on All Might, not the cow." While Kota was distracted, All Might had charged forward and delivered another blow to the face, knocking back once more. Kota flew through dozens of trees before he managed to stop himself using his flight. But All Might wasn't far behind, and he charged forward at Kota ready to deliver another powerful blow. But this time there was enough distance for Kota to react, and Kota dashed to the side, causing the attack to miss, although the sheer air pressure from the missed punch caused tons of trees and grass to be uprooted and blown away. Kota charged back at All Might and managed to land a punch on his upper body, knocking the hero back a few feet even as he dug his heels into the dirt. That actually hurt. All Might held the spot where Kota had punched him. "It's not too bad, but I definitely can't afford to let him hit my weak spot." Kota flew up a few feet in the air and started raining bolts of lighting down at the hero. But All Might was too fast, and he dodged each bolt with little difficulty. All Might then jumped up at Kota, grabbing his leg and then bringing him back down to the ground, slamming him into the dirt so hard that a whirlwind kicked up and started blowing away at the downed trees. AGHH, Kota shouted out in pain. Slam, slam, slam. All Might picked Kota back up and slammed him back down with that same force, over and over again. Kota started coughing blood, as All Might finally let his foot go. The champion in blue was stunned by the pain, unable to move as his body was unused to such punishment. All Might stood over the downed child, with his foot raised over him ready to stomp his face in with the full force of One for All. "You should have surrendered when you had the chance." However, before All Might could finish him, THROWSH, suddenly he was tackled by Izuku, who burst from the ground beneath him and flew him up into the air at super speeds. Eri flew down next to Kota and looked at him worryingly. AI, are you okay?" It took Kota a few seconds to recover, but eventually he did and he sat up. "Do I look okay?" Sorry," Eri apologized. "No, it's not your fault," Kota told her. He got up and looked at the sky. Midori was right. "He's too strong, too fast. He's too powerful. Even if there's 3 of us, we can do it," Eri told him. There was a determination in her voice that Kota had never heard before, and when he looked at her, he found that same determination in her expression. Midori said that we need to bring him up higher, into the sky. What? Why? Kota didn't fully understand the logic there. Is it because we can fly and he can't? Eri shook her head. If you go too high, then normal people won't be able to breathe because there's less air. But we don't need air to breathe, so we'll be fine. Kota didn't know any of that, although it made sense for Izuku to know. He'd always been looking at books in the library, something Kota told him was a waste of time in the past. Yet another thing he'd been wrong about. Kota shook his head. "Can't worry about that. We have to help Izuku." Kota and Eri burst into the sky at max speed, hoping to catch up with their friend. Meanwhile, with Izuku and All Might, Izuku brought All Might as high as he could, getting many miles into the air before All Might could retaliate. The hero slammed both his fists into Izuku's back, causing him to stop as he screamed out in pain. All Might picked him up by his cape, held him up to eye level, and punched him in the face, knocking him away. Just as All Might was about to kick the air to follow up on his attack, he was blasted by a bolt of lightning, courtesy of Eri, that started sending him higher once more. All Might endured the electricity and kicked the air behind to send him hurtling down towards Eri, traveling through the light. He cocked his arm back, preparing to punch Eri as he got close, but before he could get the chance, Kota rushed in and punched All Might in the face, knocking him back up into the air. Kota turned to Eri. "You have to punch him. The lightning hurts him, but if we want to follow Izuku's plan, we need to hit him." Eri was hesitant. She hadn't really hit people before. and she didn't like the idea of doing it either. If I don't hit him, Izuku and Kota will be. Eri's fist clenched with determination. She would save her friends. She wouldn't allow her weakness to hold them back. However, their hesitation gave All Might time to kick the air again and charge back down at them, punching Kota in the face and sending him hurtling down to the ground. Eri watched her friend hurtle to the ground before looking back at All Might. Eri charged at All Might, tackling him like Izuku did and forcing him higher and higher. All Might brought his hands together and was about to slam them into Eri's back like he did with Izuku, but then Eri unleashed her electricity in full power. All Might clenched his teeth as blood started seeping from his mouth, as hundreds of thousands of volts through his body, and it felt like they were cooking his insides. After a few moments, All Might managed to power through the pain and slammed his fists down on Eri's back. The pain was immense. Eri felt a force that could crush mountains hit her spine directly as the agony spread throughout her body. But even so, this pain is nothing. Eri didn't flinch. She didn't let go. She kept forcing All Might higher and higher. After all, the pain she felt now was nothing compared to dying over and over again, having your body ripped apart and put back together again at the hands of Overhaul. I won't let you hurt my friends. All Might brought his fist down on Eri's back, again and again, struggling as Eri kept pumping her electricity into him. But Eri powered through the pain. Even as blood started coming out of her mouth, she kept going. After all, this amount of blood was nothing to her. The real issue, however, was her mana pool. Using this much power for this long was draining her power, and fast. Crap, this one's tougher than the other two, All Might thought. It was either thought that Akka was the most powerful of the Marvels or the weakest, depending on if that attack she used against Overhaul was exclusive to her. But All Might never would have guessed that the meek-looking girl that would cry if the press got too close to her would be the one taking his attacks head-on. He brought his fist over his head once more, ready to exert the full power of One for All to try and release himself from her grip, when suddenly there was an arm around his neck, choking him from behind. Sorry, All Might, Izuku said as he tried to strangle his idol. But we need you to go down. Izuku started forcing electricity through All Might's body as well, doubling the damage and hurting the hero even more. Meanwhile, All Might was struggling to breathe, not just because of Izuku strangling him, but also because the lack of air was now becoming apparent, as Izuku's plan finally started to work. All Might was still holding on though, as he reached around and grabbed Izuku's cape with one hand and Eri's foot with the other, pulling both of them off of him. Then he slammed them both into each other at full strength, before letting them go and nailing them both with one punch, sending them to the ground. All Might then kicked the air behind him so he could go down and get some air. But he didn't get far, as Kota came up and punched him in the face again, sending him back up. Oh no, you're not getting back down until we say you do, Kota shouted at the hero. All Might was struggling for air, and it was at this point he realized that he may not win this fight. Still, he kicked the little air there was around and charged at Kota, but Kota flew to the side and grabbed All Might's foot as he passed by. My turn, Kota shouted as he spun All Might around at rapid speeds, before throwing him higher into the air. All Might again kicked the air to try and force himself down, but Kota charged forward and punched him in the stomach, further depriving him of air. Kota punched All Might in the face, before dodging a sloppy swing from the symbol of peace. All Might found it hard to fight both Kota and the lack of air at the same time, and as black spots appeared in his vision, he knew he was losing both. Meanwhile, Kota was just laying on the hits, pounding on the hero's chest and face as much as he could, while dodging the sparse sloppy hits coming from the air-deprived hero. As Kota cocked his arm back for another punch, he suddenly felt someone holding his arm back. He looked behind him and saw Izuku and Eri, Izuku being the one who was holding him back. That's enough. Without any other words, Izuku flew to All Might and started pushing the hero back down to the ground. Crash. After about a minute, All Might's half-conscious body crashed into the ground, making an enormous crater and kicking up tons of dirt into the air. When the dirt settled, All Might shakily pulled himself onto one knee as he gasped for air. Slam! Izuku came down and slammed his fist down on All Might's head, forcing his head into the dirt. I'm sorry. Slam, slam, slam. Izuku kept pounding on the struggling hero as he kept trying to just breathe. Eri and Kota slammed down next to Izuku, and they started wailing on All Might too, punching him all over as they just tried to take him down. Eventually steam started coming off of All Might's body, and he started to shrink. Izuku noticed this and stopped his attack. Guys, stop. Look, Kota and Eri stopped their punches, taking a moment to look at the smoking, shrinking symbol of peace. As the steam increased, they couldn't even see All Might anymore. And when the steam dissipated, they laid witness to the true All Might. A weak, skeleton-like man, struggling for breath as he started vomiting blood. What? Izuku took a step back in disbelief, all their eyes wide in shock. What the hell? Kota couldn't believe his eyes. The big, bulky, strong man that had been kicking his ass earlier was now Thighs, the weakest man he'd ever seen that looked like he was about to die. Don't. All Might struggled to take in air through the blood coming out of his mouth. Don't let them see. All Might. Izuku didn't know what the heck was going on, and he was beyond confused. Was it a fake? That was the only thing Kota could think of to rationalize this. After a few moments, Izuku shook his head. Not that power was the real thing. This had to be the real All Might, but what is this? And maybe it's because of his quirk, Kiri suggested. The other two looked at her to elaborate. Why, you said that all quirks have drawbacks, so maybe this is his drawback, and he was keeping it a secret. Kiri speculated. Izuku thought about that for a moment. All that power he has, the drawback would have to be pretty huge. Kota finished his sentence. All Might hacked up some more blood, struggling to stay conscious. Izuku shook his head rapidly as he pulled himself out of his thoughts. We can think about this later. We need to get him to a hospital. No, All Might croaked out. No hospital, our recovery girl. Recovery girl, Izuku repeated. We don't know where that old broad is, Kota pointed out. And you need help fast. I know, All Might told them. I'll tell ya where she is. The trio looked at each other. We don't have much time, Izuku told them, picking up All Might. Let's go. The other two nodded. Right. A few minutes later, the Marvels and All Might landed in the front yard, a small, unassuming house. Is this really where a hero lives? Kota wondered for a moment, before returning his attention to the matter at hand. Izuku flew down to the front door and started rapidly knocking on it with his super speed, while also trying not to break down the door. Eventually, they heard the sound of the door unlocking, and soon after it opened, revealing the small old lady that was Recovery Girl. All right, who? Recovery Girl froze when she saw the three Marvels, with a bloody beaten All Might in his true form. Get him inside. The three wasted no time and quickly entered Recovery Girl's house as she swiftly closed the door behind her. Recovery Girl's home was small, humble. The living room they walked in only had a few things: a couch, a rug, a small table, and a TV, with a staircase off the right. Put him on the couch, Recovery Girl ordered as she left the room. Izuku nodded and laid All Might down on the couch, where he promptly lost consciousness. After about a minute, Recovery Girl came back, this time in her uniform, a mask, and a small table full of medical tools. Did anyone see him transform? She asked the trio in a very curt manner. Izuku shook his head. No. Good. Recovery Girl went over to All Might. Looks like he finally met his match. He should be grateful that at least his opponents did him the courtesy of not letting him bleed to death. I'll have to call in the special unit. For now, I'll do what I can. Izuku just looked at All Might, the defeated symbol of peace, with a very troubled expression. However, Kota and Eri were having another issue. Midori. Kota put his hand on Izuku's shoulder to get his attention. We have to go. What? Now? Izuku didn't want to leave. Not until he knew All Might was okay. But after looking at the faces of his companions, he realized the issue they were having. They were running out of power. Izuku had expended himself the least during the fight, so it wasn't as bad for him. But the other two had used up quite a bit of their energy, and they needed to get home fast before they were kicked out of their transformation. He took one last look at All Might before turning back to his friends. Okay, let's go. And without another word, they zoomed out of Recovery Girl's house and into the night sky. A minute later, at the mansion, the flight home had been swift, and luckily Kota and Eri had a bit more than enough energy to make it back. SHAZAM, KRAKOOM. 3 bolts of lightning came down and turned them all back into their normal, child forms. Eri and Kota collapsed on the floor, now feeling extremely tired. While Izuku was a bit tired himself, he managed to remain standing. Before Kota could say anything, Eri latched onto him and hugged him while crying into his torso. Please don't go, Eri begged. Kota's tired eyes widened with shock. Eri never really liked to initiate contact, so her suddenly hugging him out of nowhere was a surprise. I thought you were gonna leave and not come back. Like my mama, Eri revealed as she cried. Well, having just thought All Might, Kota was fully sure that that one sentence hurt him more than any punch could. Feeling guilt stab him right in the heart, Kota winced, and thoroughly regretted storming off so quickly. I'm sorry. I just got upset. Please stop crying, Kota begged. I'm not leaving, Eri sniffled. Really? Yes, really, Kota sighed. Eri's crying lessened a little, but she still continued to cry softly into his shirt. Figuring there was nothing he could do about that for now, Kota looked up at Izuku, who was just staring at the two of them. Kota sighed, as he realized that he'd have to confront the truth. Fine, you were right, and I should have waited. I'm sorry. Izuku shook his head. That doesn't matter. I'm just happy you're safe. TCH. Kota blushed slightly and looked away to try and hide it. I'm just surprised you would fight your idol. You were so sure we'd lose. I was. But when you two started fighting, I knew I had to find a way to win. Izuku pouted. Even if it was a fluke. Fluke. Kota looked back at Izuku, seeming slightly offended. No way. We won that fair and square. We only won because All Might didn't know we could breathe without air. If he knew that, he wouldn't have let us take him up that high. Izuku speculated. We'd have lost, no doubt. Now wait a minute, Kota said, getting ready to argue. Stop, Eri shouted, once again surprising the two of them, forcing them to stop. No more fighting, please. Kota and Izuku looked at Eri, and then at each other, and soon came to a silent understanding. No more arguing, at least not tonight. I'm tired, Kota sighed. Me too, Izuku said. Let's just got to bed. And so the children got into their beds and quickly fell asleep. Naomasa walked silently through the hospital. His expression was mostly unreadable, but anyone who knew him could see the worry in his eyes. After a few minutes of walking, he came up to room 516. The room All Might was located. He hesitated a bit. Naomasa was one of the very few people that was informed of All Might's defeat at the hands of the Marvels. And like everyone else who was told, he was shocked. What made him hesitant to go inside and check on his friend was that he didn't know how bad of a state he was in. All he was told was that All Might had lost to the Marvels and was recovering in a private hospital room inside the hero wing. That could mean a lot of things. His injuries could range from a few broken bones and bruises to something more major. But he steeled himself. He knew the anxiety of the unknown wouldn't resolve until he saw All Might himself. And so after taking a breath, he entered. When he got inside, he was relieved to see that All Might was conscious, sitting up in his bed and relatively okay, at least compared to the last time a villain sent him to the hospital. He was of course covered from head to toe in bandages and casts, as well as having a few things plugged into him. But of course, he was still well enough to smile when he saw his friend entering the room. Naomasa, good to see you. All Might's voice was a bit hoarse, most likely from how much he had to struggle to breathe through the lack of air in his own blood. I wish I could say the same. Naomasa put on a fake smile for his friend. I heard you lost. All Might paused for a moment, his smiling falling before he turned his head to look down at his sheets. Yes, I did. Naomasa didn't say anything, because he knew he didn't need to. The questions he had were obvious, with the biggest one being, how? They were stronger than I anticipated, especially Akka. Faster too. I underestimated them. All Might explained, but that wasn't the reason I lost. I was still far stronger and quicker than they were. Was it their numbers? Naomasa knew that one of the most dangerous things about the Marvels was not just their power, but their numbers as well. God knows if there were 3 All Mights, they'd never need to worry about a single villain ever again. That was part of it. But there was another factor. I didn't know all of their abilities. All Might revealed. I managed to find AI by himself and I was handling him fairly easily. Well, maybe easily isn't the right word to use. It wasn't a hard fight, but he still put up far more a fight than most I've fought. I was about to finish him off when the other 2 arrived. They kept throwing me up to higher and higher altitudes until I lost the ability to breathe. But they were seemingly unaffected by the lack of oxygen. So you're saying they either have some sort of ability that allows them to breathe in low oxygen environments, or they just don't need to breathe. Naomasa speculated. Exactly. All Might nodded. That could prove to be trouble. Naomasa gave off a nervous sweat. While the ability to not have to breathe wasn't flashy, it was definitely useful. It allowed for a person to make use of multiple different terrains like underwater, high in the sky, or in extremely hot places like volcanoes. It meant they didn't have to take in any enemy gas attacks, making quirks like Midnight's all but useless. And it made attacks revolving around strangulations or anything similar to it completely useless, especially if they are in league with. They're not. All Might cut him off. Well, I can't say that for sure, but I'm very confident that they aren't. What makes you say that? Naomasa had a pretty good idea of what it was that reassured the hero that the vigilantes weren't in league all for one, but those were just assumptions. Better to hear it from the man himself. Firstly, they made sure not to kill me. That was All Might's biggest piece of evidence. AI was relentlessly attacking me while I was suffocating, but Midori stopped him and brought me to the ground so I could breathe again. And when I started deflating into his form, he stopped the other 2. And they were also the ones to bring me to Recovery Girl, while also hiding my true form from the public. If they were minions of All for One, they wouldn't have done either of those things. He would never miss the opportunity to expose me or have me killed. True enough, Naomasa remarked. Also, I talked to AI for a bit before the fight. He didn't seem to work for All for One or even know who he was. At first, I thought it could have been acting, but given the fact that they spared my life, I'm more inclined to believe it wasn't. All Might explained. AI always has been the biggest piece of evidence against them working for All for One, so that makes sense, Naomasa said. Any way you look at it, if they were working for All for One as vigilantes to disrupt hero society or turn the public against heroes, it would be a good thing to gain the public's trust, something AI seems to not care about in the slightest. Even Akka doesn't seem to care all too much about public approval. The only one acting in a way that would make sense if that theory was true is Midori. Also, none of them used the attack Akka used against Overhaul, meaning that it's almost definitely not a teleportation ability and is most likely some form of an instant death attack. All Might theorized. Which again adds to the evidence that they're not working for All for One. Right, but of course then that does beg the question, how did they get their quirks? Niyamasa asked. Pretty much everyone knew that the Marvel's abilities weren't natural. Not only were their powers far too varied for them to only have one quirk, but it was also way too strange for all three of them to have the exact same abilities, not to mention the absurd amount of power they had. AI said they weren't siblings, All Might recalled, making it even stranger for them to have shared abilities. There is definitely a secret behind them, but for the time being, I don't think they themselves have malicious intentions. That doesn't mean we don't have to take them down, Niyamasa said. Do you think you could beat them the next time around? Possibly. Their strategy implies they weren't confident about their chances in a straight-up brawl, and I have a better grasp of their abilities and strength, and I know if I can separate them and fight them individually, it's practically a guaranteed victory. All Might respond, although there is still that light attack that was used against Overhaul. It's possible that they didn't use it because they had confidence in their plan. If they're really backed into a corner, they may use it again. That is the biggest issue when it comes to fighting them. Niyamasa sighed. He really wished they knew more about that light attack. Of course, it's not like I'll be fighting them anytime soon. All Might traced his fingers over his bandages. With these injuries, I'll be out about a week, and after that I'll need to start regular patrols, otherwise crime will start to rise and people will panic. It will probably be a while before I encounter them again. That means they'll be running around unchecked for a while, Niyamasa pointed out. Maybe not, All Might thought. I think it's time I passed on one for all. A week and a half later, with the Marvels, Eri was concerned. After the fight with All Might and Izuku and Kota made up, she'd hoped for things to go back to normal. And while things with Kota seemed to be fine, the same could not be said for Izuku. On the surface, he still did what he normally did, mostly watching the news, waiting for All Might to show up. He still ate with them and talked to them and everything, but his mood had overall dropped. At first, she just chalked it up to him being worried about All Might. Izuku had always displayed a love for him in particular, even buying a few pieces of merch with the money they had. So seeing his favorite hero in such an injured state must have been stressful, to say the least. So when she saw on the news that All Might had returned and started his patrols again, she thought that Izuku would be happier, which he was. She recalled the relieved face and bright smile he had when he saw that broadcast. However, it didn't last. Even when they had returned to doing patrols again, he still seemed bothered. Right now, Eri and Kota were flying above the streets, watching Izuku from behind as he was flying an injured man to the hospital. I am surprised you're still coming with us, Eri told Kota. I thought you wouldn't. Well, it may be taking a while to find Muscular, but if I give up I'll never find him, Kota reasoned. And that's unacceptable. I just got too impatient. I'm sorry I made you worry. It's fine, Eri quickly reassured him, not wanting him to feel bad on her behalf. It's just I'm happy. Kota's lips twitched upwards as he suppressed the urge to smile. Whatever. Eri looked at Izuku as they reached the hospital and he brought the injured man inside. Izuku's upset. Kota nodded. He's probably still upset about having to fight All Might. There was a small hint of guilt in Kota's voice. In all honesty, he did feel bad for not only endangering his friends by being reckless, but he also forced Izuku to fight his idol. He's to himself to us about it. He probably thinks we don't notice. Kota sighed. The only way to fix this is to talk to him about it. Will that help? Eri wasn't a big fan of confrontation, which is why she had yet to ask Izuku himself about what was bothering him. Only one way to find out. Kota shrugged. Just a moment later, Izuku zoomed over to them. All right, he's being taken care of. Let's. Izuku, we know something's been bothering you, Kota said bluntly. Izuku was likely to deny it if they tried to use subtlety, so the best route was to be very direct. Spill it. What? Guys, I'm Izuku stopped when he saw the looks on his friends' faces. Kota was not at all buying it, giving him a very unimpressed glare. While Eri also wasn't buying it, she looked more openly concerned. Seeing no real way to deny it, Izuku slumped over and sighed. It's just I can't believe I hurt All Might. All Might. He saved so many people and I had tried to choke him. Izuku started muttering about how terrible he felt, going on and on while Eri and Kota thought about what to do. However, before they could, Izuku came up with a solution first. I have to apologize. That's stupid, Kota said immediately. He'd try to fight us. I know, but what if I apologized in my normal form instead of this one? Izuku proposed. He won't know it's me, so he won't try to fight me. It's perfect. But if he doesn't know it's you, then he won't even know what you're apologizing for, Kota pointed out. And if you're too obvious about it, he might figure out who you are. No way. No one would think that a quickness kid is secretly Marvel Midori. And I won't be that obvious anyway. Izuku didn't seem like he was gonna budge on this. Plus I just have to. I'm not gonna feel better until I do. I'm sorry if it feels like I'm being selfish. I'll do it by myself, but I need to do it. Eri and Kota looked at each other and after a few moments, they wordlessly came to a conclusion. You're not going alone. If something happens and you need to fight All Might, then we need to be there to help. Kota rationalized. Don't do what I did. If you're gonna do something stupid, then don't do it alone. Eri nodded. Don't leave us. Izuku was taken aback by this support. He had expected Kota to want nothing to do this, and for Eri to be too shy to want to join him as well. So for both of them to give him their support so easily, it was making him tear up a bit. Thanks, guys. Izuku wiped away the few tears that came out of his eyes. You're the best. Whatever. Kota crossed his arms. The only reason he wasn't arguing more with this was because it was pretty much his fault. And so by doing this, it wouldn't just absolve Izuku's guilt, but his own, even if he thought it was stupid. Alright, the first step is to sneak into UA, Izuku said. What? That took Kota off guard. Are you insane? Don't worry. We'll just move so fast that no one can see us enter, hide away behind some trees or something, we transform back, and we find All Might. Izuku explained his terrible plan with a huge smile on his face like it was some kind of genius scheme. There are so many problems with that plan, Kota pointed out. The wisdom of Solomon informed Izuku of all the holes and flaws with his plan the moment he thought it up. Chances are they would get spotted in their child forms and kicked out before they could find All Might, but it was the best chance they had. All Might wasn't hard to find, but you'd be hard-pressed to keep him in one location long enough to speak to him, so just going around in their child forms hoping to find All Might and talk to him would take a long time. And obviously, they couldn't go to him in their champion forms because he would attack them. So this was the best he had. We don't have any other options, so this is the best plan we have. And even if it fails and we get found out, I can just say that I have a teleportation quirk and accidentally teleported from my house to UA, Izuku explained. Then when they look away, we'll sneak off, transform, and leave. Kota thought about it for a minute. The best part about their secret identity was that it was easy to keep a secret. No one would believe that the Marvels were a bunch of kids. So they would pretty much have to let people find out about who they were in order for them to figure it out. And everything else Izuku said was plausible. Fine, Kota sighed. But if something goes wrong, it's your fault. Izuku nodded, before turning to Eri. What do you think, Eri? Well, I'll do it, Eri answered simply. She didn't like the idea of sneaking around a place full of people that wanted to arrest them, but she trusted Kota and Izuku. If they said it was okay, then she would do it. Alright, let's do it tomorrow so we'll have all of our power in case we need it, Izuku told them. Now, back to patrol. And with that, Izuku sped off, with Eri and Kota following behind him. The next day, after a long night's rest and a somewhat decent breakfast, the trio transformed and took to the sky, intent on going with Izuku's plan to apologize to All Might. That was until Izuku got distracted. Look, guys, it's the USJ facility. Izuku pointed at a building below them, stopping them all so they could get a better look at it. And what the heck is a USJ? Kota almost regretted asking because he already knew it had to be some kind of hero-related thing for Izuku to be this interested in it. It's a place where UA trains their students. It has all sorts of cool environments and things to help teach the future heroes how to fight villains and save people, Izuku explained. It's so cool. I wish I could see the inside. Kota face-bombed. Focus, Midori. We didn't come to go sightseeing. We came so you could apologize to All Might and stop being so freaking sad to look at. Yumi's that a student? Eri pointed down, and both Izuku and Kota looked to see that there was indeed a student, running away from the USJ, at speeds only a quirk could make possible. I think it is either that or a short pro, Kota commented. Why is he running away? Izuku knew that hero students normally couldn't use their quirks in public, so what was happening? Being ever the curious one, Izuku zoomed down to investigate. The green-clad Marvel flew right in front of the student, who appeared to be wearing what looked like a suit of armor. The student's eyes widened under his helmet, and he slowly came to a stop until he halted right in front of Izuku. A Marvel, the student said. Hi there. Izuku greeted him with a friendly smile. Please, save my classmates, the student begged. Izuku was taken aback by the sudden request. My classmates are under attack by a large group of villains who appeared in the USJ via a villain with a portal quirk, the boy explained. My classmates managed to stall the villains long enough for me to flee to get help. I was planning to go to the teachers, but I was fortunate to run into you. While I do not normally approve of vigilantes, I beg of you, please save my classmates. What's going on? Kota and Eri came down, flying slightly above the boy and looking at Izuku. Some UA students are being attacked by villains at the USJ, Izuku explained to them, seeing his two partners' eyes widen. We have to help them. Ugh, villains are so annoying. Fine, I'll kick their shit in and save some wannabe heroes. Kota groaned angrily. Language. Izuku turned to the boy. You should go and get the teachers. We'll take care of the villains. Thank you. And with that, the boy wasted no more time, firing up his quirk, which appeared to be engines in his legs, and speeding off towards UA's main building. The three Marvels looked at the USJ building. Izuku zoomed in, followed by Kota and then Eri. Little did they know the fight ahead of them would be their hardest one yet. Aizawa was not having a good day. First, All Might had to cancel on the USJ lesson. That idiot used too much of his time and now he wouldn't be able to last a full lesson in his buff form. So it was just him and 13. Then villains attacked. Not just a few villains, a literal army of villains, all being led by some guy with hands all over him with a villain who could make portals at his side. So after sending his class away and doing quite an impressive job of taking the vast majority of the villains, there were only 2 left. The leader and his giant black birdman thing that apparently was called Namu. The Namu thing was rather strange. It had a completely exposed brain, and he could see that parts of him were seemingly cybernetic, some metal poking out of his arms and its spine seemingly being covered with it. The leader actually wasn't too difficult to deal with. He had a close call with his quirk destroying some of the skin on his elbow, but other than that it would have been a fairly simple takedown. Until Namu came in. He didn't even see it move, and it pinned him down with so much strength that he didn't have even a hope of escaping it. If he had to compare the creature to anything, the only person that would come to mind would be All Might himself. Of course, he tried to erase its quirk, but that didn't work, telling him that whatever quirk this monster had, it was a mutation quirk. Not that that would help him with his current situation, pinned down on the floor with Namu completely restraining him. Namu, kill him slowly, the leader ordered, sending a chill down Eraserhead's spine. Shit, Aizawa grit his teeth so as not to scream out in pain. When Namu started pressing down on his body, his massive hands quickly starting to break the teacher, Hiro's bones. Fuck, this is how I'm gonna die. Aizawa could see his life flash before his eyes. Yamada, I'm sorry. You're the only one left. However, before Aizawa could finish accepting his death, a booming voice filled the area. Hey, knock it off, you oversized crow. Shigaraki paused and looked up at the source of the voice. There he saw Marvel AI, flying above the fountain, slowly descending until he landed about a dozen feet away from Aizawa and the Namu. Ah, Marvel AI. Namu, stop crushing that mini-boss. Attack AI, Tamura ordered. Kota rolled his eyes and Namu released Aizawa. Yeah, that'll go well for you. Why don't you just give up now and... Wham! Thanks to Kota letting his guard down, he was not prepared for the Namu to charge at him at speeds comparable to All Might, and hit him without about the same strength, right in the face. Kota went flying back, getting sent through the fountain, destroying it completely, and still going a few feet back until Kota stopped himself mid-air. Shit, Kota whipped some blood from his nose. Alright, guess this is happening. The two charged at each other, their fists cocked and ready to battle. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Momo, Gyro, and Kaminari were facing off against a still large group of villains. They had taken out a lot of them using a combination of their powers, but there were just so many of them. Can't you just zap them all, lightning dolt? Gyro asked Kaminari. That's not how electricity works. If I zap them, then I'll zap you too, Kaminari argued. Krakoom. Suddenly, from above them, a torrent of lightning bolts crashed down onto the villains, smoking them instantly and leaving them all to fall onto the floor unconscious. The three students stood there in shock, staring at the dozens of now unconscious villains. Eventually, Gyro turned to head to Kaminari. So what was that about electricity? Are you okay? The three students looked up and saw Eri flying down towards them, with a concerned expression. Marvel Aka. Momo gasped. You see, it was a marvel. Their powers don't make any sense, Kaminari said, defending his argument. What are Yaohawi, are you here? Gyro asked, wondering how the vigilante could have known about the attack. We saw this guy with armor running away. He said you were in trouble, Eri explained while fiddling with her cape in a nervous fashion. That must have been it, Momo said, immediately recognizing the description of her classmate's hero costume. They must have found a way to get him out so he could get to UA and ask for help, and ran into the Marvels on the way, Kaminari said cheerily. Nice, we're saved. So you're not hurt? Eri asked. Oh, no, we're fine. Please go help our other classmates, Momo told her. Oh, okay. Eri quickly sped away, leaving a gust of wind behind her as she went off the next area. You think everyone else is okay? Gyro asked Momo. They should be. We may not have known them for very long, but if they made it to UA, they can hold out against these lackluster villains, Momo told her friends and herself. And besides, Marvel Aka is never alone. Either Marvel Midori or Marvel AI is here with her, or both. Everyone should already be safe. Momo said that, but for whatever reason, she couldn't rid herself of an ominous feeling. Elsewhere, we're gonna die. We're gonna die. We're gonna die. You're really not helping Minta, Asui told her sobbing classmate as she tried her hardest to keep them both alive. After getting sent to the flood zone by the mist villains, Asui quickly got them both on the rescue boat that was floating in the area. The villains had surprisingly not tried to make it on the boat, but that didn't keep them safe for long, as one villain with the ability to manipulate water made a giant watery hand and cleaved the boat in half. After that, Asui had been hopping from one piece of destroyed boat to the other like they were lily pads, with Minta tucked under her arm, and while the villains kept destroying more the floating chunks of the boat she had left, Asui may have seemed calm, but internally she was panicking just as much as Mindtalk, maybe not that much, but she was still freaking out. She knew soon enough they would have to enter the water, and with this many villains whose quirks all seemed tailored to this kind of situation, she knew that they wouldn't last much longer. However, it seems that would happen sooner than she thought. As she leaped for another piece of the wreckage, suddenly it was knocked out of the way, and a villain with a shark head popped up, with his jaws opened. Asui eyes widened in fear, as now she was suddenly on a collision course with death. All she could do is close her eyes, and then, swoosh, phew, that was close. Asui opened her eyes, and found herself floating, a good few feet above the water. Izuku had come in and swooped Asui and Minta away from an untimely death, and was holding them both in his arms. Marvel Midori. Minta was still crying, but now they were tears of joy. We're saved. Thank Yaowu. Meanwhile, the villains were all looking up in a mix of shock and fear, and the shark villain said Oshi. Zap. After electrifying the water, the villains were left floating and unconscious and smoking. Haha, take that, you bastards. Zap. Minta cheered. Language, Izuku scolded him. Yes sir, Minta said swiftly. Heroes shouldn't swear. Izuku told them as he flew them away from the shipwreck zone and towards the plaza. As Izuku flew over the plaza, he noticed Aizawa down on the floor, and Kota getting his ass kicked by the Namu. Thwack. Ahh. Izuku had to move aside as Kota got punched through the ceiling. Aoi, Izuku called out. What the hell is that thing? Minta shouted out in pure fear. It's keeping up with a marvel. There was a slight tremble in Asui's voice. She knew the kind of power the marvels possessed, and for a villain to be keeping up with one of them, let alone seemingly beating one. Izuku swiftly turned his attention towards the Namu. This thing, it looks unnatural. It must be strong if it managed to hit Kota like that. First I have to get these two away from it though. Meanwhile, in the distance, Tamura and Kirigiri looked at Izuku flying above them. Looks like Midori came to play. And he brought guests. Namu, kill them too. The Namu jumped at Izuku, at once again truly terrifying speeds. Fast. By the time Izuku finished that thought, Namu was only a foot away from him with its hand outstretched and ready to grab Izuku's head. BLAM. Fortunately, Kota came back down and slammed right into the monster before it could reach Izuku, forcing it into the ground. The impact creating a massive dust cloud, forcing Izuku to shield his eyes so as to not get debris in them, with Minta and Asui doing the same. When they looked back, they saw Kota flying above the ground, his face slightly bloodied, but that didn't do much to hide his obvious rage. And the Namu was half buried into the ground with its lower half sticking out. Huh, eat it asshole, Kota shouted at the half-buried beast. However, his celebration didn't last long, as concrete around the Namu began to crack and shift, meaning that it wouldn't be buried for very long. Gioror, is Midori. Put those idiots down and help me, Kota shouted out to his friend. Izuku wanted to scold him for calling two people they've never met idiots, but he knew now was not the time. With Namu quickly pulling itself out of the ground, Izuku wasted no time landing and setting both Asui and Minta down behind him. You two get away from here. We'll take care of this cyborg monster thing. Yes sir. Minta gladly started running the other way, with Asui following suit. Pay attention Midori, Kota shouted at him. Izuku turned around and saw Namu now completely unearthed and ready to go, and it quickly charged at them. The two Marvel did the same and flew towards it, both of them barely dodging a sloppy right hook, and retaliating with two punches, one from Kota to the face and one from Izuku to the stomach. Both of them did absolutely nothing, and Namu was not fazed in the slightest. What? Izuku shouted out in shock. Not even All Might could take our punches like that. Damn it, Kota shouted. Namu reacted quickly and grabbed the two their heads, lifting them up and slamming their heads together. The two shouted out in pain before Namu threw both of them away. The two tumbled a bit, before eventually recovering and stopping themselves using their flight. Damn it, this fucking thing has something called shock absorption. That guy covered in hands over there told me it lets him absorb all our punches, Kota revealed. Well, why didn't you say that sooner? Izuku asked him, slightly upset that he didn't share this vital information with him. Well, I didn't much look out, Kota shouted. The Namu charged at them, with its hands out to grab them both, and the two Marvels managed to dodge just in time, flying in opposite directions away from the beast. Namu looked in both directions, but it didn't move. It just kept moving its head from one side to the other, looking at Kota and then at Izuku. Izuku squinted at the sight of his unmoving opponent. Is it trying to figure out which one of us to go for? Unfortunately, Kota did not take the time to notice this and shot a lightning bolt at the cyborg. The lightning hit Namu's massive chest. However, instead of injuring it, the bolt just seemed to get absorbed inside of the Namu. Suddenly, its mechanical parts glowed blue for a few seconds before its muscles started to swell slightly. I wouldn't try that if I were you. This thing not only has one type of shock absorption but two. Tamura laughed maniacally. You can throw all the lightning you want at it. That will only make it stronger. Wait, that means this thing has more than one quirk. Izuku realized, his mouth open in shock. Actually, with 2 kinds of shock absorption, and its insane power, it must have at least 3 quirks. So close. This Namu has been loaded up with far more than 3 quirks, and you haven't even seen everything it can do. Tamura monologues. This Namu was designed with the sole purpose of killing All Might and all 3 marvels. It's the anti-symbol of peace, the bringer of despair, the Krakoom. As the hand-covered villain was speaking, Kota shot out a bolt of lightning his way, only for Namu to jump in the way and take the blast of electricity, absorbing it and growing more powerful and bulky. Will you shut up already? Kota shouted at the villain. Kota, stop. You're only making it more powerful. Izuku shouted out. Well, if you're gonna be rude. Namu, kill them. Now, Tamura ordered once more. However, the Namu didn't move from its spot. Rather, it started looking side to side like it did before, trying to decide which one to go for, but lacking the mental capacity to actually make a decision. Kota was about to charge at the Namu to deliver yet another pointless attack. But Izuku shot a lightning bolt in front of Kota, forcing him to stop and look at his green-suited friend. Hey, AI, that won't work, Izuku pointed out. Stop and look at what it's doing. Kota still looked pissed, but he did what he was told and stared at Namu for a few seconds. It's just standing there moving its head like an idiotic chuli. Why the hell aren't you attacking? Shigaraki asked, moving his arms around like he was throwing a tantrum. Sir, you told it to go after the 2 marvels. It appears that since they are no longer right next to each other, it is having a hard time picking which one to attack. Hirajiri explained to his man-child boss. I don't care. Choose one, Tamura ordered, seeming just childish as Kota despite being over twice his age. The Namu let out some confused noises and stopped moving its head, now just being frozen in place seemingly. Sir, it literally does not have the mental capability to choose anything, Hirajiri pointed out. Interesting. It's like it doesn't have a will of its own. It's like it's a robot, just doing what it's told, Izuku thought. Guys, Izuku and Kota looked behind them and saw Eri flying over towards them, landing next to Kota and looking at his bloodied face with fear. What happened? Why are you bleeding? Eri, understandably, started freaking out. Not much was capable of harming them, so seeing her friends hurt was not only horrifying but also shocking. That thing, Kota pointed at the Namu. That thing happened. It can absorb our lightning and our punches, Izuku quickly explained. But it's mindless, and it's not very smart. It can't decide which one of us to attack. Yeah, some anti-symbol of peace you got there, Kota mocked. You know what? Focus on AI. Kill the other 2 if they get in your way, Tamura ordered, being more specific. And then the Namu moved. Fuck, was all Kota had time to say before he had to duck a punch to the face. Eri grabbed Kota and flew up and back, trying to get away from Namu, but Namu just got ready to lunge at them. Izuku saw Kota get ready to blast it with lightning. Aoi, stop. You're just gonna make it stronger. What else do you want me to do? Kota flew up, barely managing to avoid Namu's lunge. We have 2 things. We punch people, and we shoot them with lightning. And this thing is immune to both of them. GAH. Izuku grit his teeth as he watched Namu jump up and grab Kota's leg, before slamming it down into the ground, and then doing it again, and again, and again. He wanted to charge in and help, but he knew there really wasn't anything he could do. It was made to destroy us. It's immune to punches and lightning. Think, Izuku. What can you do? Eri charged down and grabbed Namu's hand, and with all her strength she barely managed to lift 2 of its fingers off Kota's leg, allowing Kota to break free and fly away. However, Namu used its other arm and backhanded Eri away. Wait, if they made this thing to destroy us, then they could only make it immune to the powers they know about, Izuku realized. Aoi, use your quirk. What ga? Kota got distracted by Izuku, allowing Namu to charge at him and get on top of him, using one of his massive hands to keep Kota pinned to the ground, and its other hand to start punching Kota in the face, each hit feeling like a sledgehammer to the face of his child form, each punch further bloodying his already slightly messed up face. Why? You've never used your quirk in this form before, so they wouldn't have known to make a counter to it, Izuku explained. I always thought that maybe our powers would boost your quirks. You have to try it now. Fuck it. Kota raised his hand and pointed it at Namu's massive bird-like face. Swoosh. A massive torrent of water burst out of Kota's hand and completely engulfed Namu's upper body. What? Water? Tamura shouted out, anger once again filling his voice. Since when could they do that? The high-pressure blast of water flew through the roof of the USJ building, looking like a water spout had formed in the center of the building. When the attack stopped and the water was gone, Kota could see the effect it had on the Namu. Or rather, what was left of it. Kota's attack had completely destroyed the creature's upper half, leaving only its legs and a bit of its lower waist behind, as a bleeding stump. Holy shit. Kota coughed. Caked in blood was an expression of pure shock. And he wasn't the only one. Ahhh, Eri screamed and flew back a bit, covering her mouth with her hands and looking at the remains of the Namu in pure horror. No, not again. So it did enhance their quirks. Izuku was probably the least shocked out of everyone, having theorized about this and somewhat expecting an outcome like this, although the effectiveness of the attack did stun him just a bit. So you had a special attack hidden away all this time. Tamura started scratching his neck. Not that it matters, because Namu had something you didn't know about either. Then, suddenly, Namu's stump began to pulsate, and then to grow. All three marvels looked on in horror as the Namu grew back, its entire upper body until it was back to full health, including its metal parts. That's impossible, Izuku said in pure disbelief. No regeneration quirk in existence should let it grow back so much of its body, and definitely shouldn't have been able to grow back its head like that. And the metal parts, how the hell? Behold its hyperspeed regeneration. The culmination of so many different regeneration quirks all at once. So long as any part of it remains, it can regenerate its entire body. Tamura gloated as if he personally had anything to be proud of, even its cybernetic augmentations. Thanks to the revolutionary work of our good doctors. I told you before, didn't I? It doesn't matter what you do, you're going to die. Kota grit his teeth and flew backward. And Namu gave chase, coming at him with his fist extended. The blue-suited marvel unleashed another torrent of water that engulfed Namu's arm. However, Namu was too fast, and the remains of Namu's mostly destroyed arms hit Kota right in the chest, knocking him back. The Namu quickly regenerated its arm and charged after Kota. Kota saw the behemoth coming at him, and did the only thing he could do, shooting another blast of water, this time at its legs. The Namu tumbled as its legs were taken out from under it, and reduced to bloody stumps by the water pressure. However, they knew it wouldn't take long for it to grow them back. Now, with no more options available, Izuku knew it was time for their last resort. He flew over to Eri, who was flying a foot above the ground, frozen in terror and unsure of what to do. Yako, we need you to erase it. What? Eri backed away slightly, looking even more fearful somehow. Akka, we can't beat it, Izuku told her. Kota can only hold it off for so long. It's not alive. It's mindless. You won't be killing it because something that isn't alive can't be killed. Just think of it like crushing a rock. You're not hurting anything. Eri looked hesitantly at Izuku, before looking at Kota and Namu. Kota was doing his best to take down the Namu, blasting off parts of it with water, but the Namu just kept growing it back and going after Kota. Eri, please. Izuku reimagined her attention. We only have so much power. If Kota runs out and turns back to normal, he'll die, and then we'll die, unless you erase it. Please. Eri started hyperventilating a bit, and Izuku held her shoulders to try and comfort her. Please, Eri, we need you. She looked at the Namu, at the monster she was being told to kill. Izuku had made it all so clear. She knew what she had to do. Eri looked back at Izuku and nodded, with tears in her eyes. All right. Izuku turned towards Kota. AI, take out its legs again. On it, Kota blasted Namu's legs out again, forcing its body to tumble to the ground. Akka, now, Izuku ordered. Eri took a deep breath and tried to activate her quirk. Her horn started to grow, and bolts of energy started coming off of her. Zoom. She charged at the Namu at max speed. But strangely enough, when she started getting close to the Namu, it seemed like time came to a crawl. When she was only a few feet away, she reached out her hand to touch it and erase this monster from existence. Eri. As she got close, the bird-like face of the Namu shifted, turning into Overhaul's masked face. Eri, you cursed child. Murderer, you killed me. Eri's eyes shrank in fear, as she could hear Overhaul's voice shout at her. You cursed child. You killer. Suddenly her own mother's voice joined in, as flashes of her appeared in her mind. Killer. Eri. Eri's hand touched Namu's chest, and nothing happened. Suddenly Eri snapped back to reality, confused as to what just happened and why Namu was seemingly unaffected by her quirk, until she realized her quirk wasn't on. Namu quickly punched her away, shooting her into the air and almost going through the ceiling before Izuku caught her. Eri, what happened? Izuku was so scared and confused that he completely forgot to call her by her vigilante name. I can't. Eri was hyperventilating a lot. I'm sorry. Izuku could tell that Eri would be out of the battle, at least of a bit. She was completely unresponsive, just crying and saying I'm sorry over and over again. Meanwhile, down below, Kota wasn't doing so great. After learning about his quirk's new power enhancement, he had been able to reliably keep Namu away from him. But he couldn't do this forever. He could feel his mana pool draining. He was already over halfway down. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before he ran out of power, and that would be the end of him. And so for once, he used some of that wisdom of Solomon. We have to run, Kota said after giving Namu another blast of pressured water to keep it back. We can't beat this thing. I know, Izuku shouted back. But if we run, and everyone else dies. Kota growled. On one hand, he didn't want to die. On the other, he didn't want other people to die in his place. And he didn't know which part of him was winning out. And we won't have to. Izuku shouted at him. Help is on the way. And then, right on cue, the doors of the USJ burst open. Fear not, for I am here. The moment All Might walked into the USJ, he was concerned. Firstly, he saw villains and the Marvels still here. That was concerning because according to Ida, he ran into the Marvels a few minutes ago, and adding in the time it took for him to get here, he would have expected for the villains to have been defeated, and for the Marvels to have left already. Secondly, the Marvels looked like they were actually struggling against this big, cyborg brain villain. In other words, he'd need to employ caution. Finally, All Might. Tamura smirked underneath the hand on his face. I'm so glad you're finally here. I was hoping you'd show up a bit later when the Marvels were already dead, so that way I could devote my full attention to watching you die. But watching you all struggle against my Namu, only to fall in the end, is also a satisfying enough conclusion. Namu, kill All Might in the Marvels, but focus on All Might. The Namu turned his head towards All Might and dashed towards him. Fast. All Might was alarmed at just how fast the Namu was, around his own speed. He saw the monster charging at him with its fist cocked back to punch him, so All Might did what he does best. He pulled his fist back and got ready to punch it. Their fists met, and there was an explosion of force and wind that filled the entire area around, sweeping everything away like a hurricane. Gah! Tamura was also swept back by this wind and had to stay farther away from the fight to make sure he didn't get knocked off his feet. All Might looked at the perfectly intact Namu with shock. This thing just took one of my punches. Now fully aware of the threat, he threw aside any notion of holding back and unleashed a flurry of punches at Namu, which did nothing. All Might's punches hit Namu dead in the chest, but the artificial creation just ate them without even flinching, before returning its own volley of punches. Gah! All Might had to dig his feet into the ground to prevent himself from getting knocked away from the sheer force of Namu's powerful blows. Crap. It's as strong as it is tough. Shit. AI, get him off All Might. Izuku ordered. Og, he better not try to fight us too. Kota complained but still complied, flying over to the Namu's left, before unleashing another torrent of water at the Namu, blasting it away and damaging its body quite a bit. Since when could he do that? All Might thought in shock, before shaking his head to refocus himself. No, I can ask those questions later. Right now I need to focus on them. All Might's train of thought stopped when he looked at what remained of Namu's body once Kota finished blasting it. Most of its skin had been blasted off as well as some muscle, so the bone was exposed in places. And there was a massive hole going all the way through its chest. And then he saw it start regenerating. That won't stop it for long, Kota growled. Trust me. Izuku quickly zoomed over to All Might's side. All Might, that thing has multiple quirks. It has a shock absorption quirk, an electricity absorption quirk, and super strength, speed, and regeneration. Its actual durability doesn't seem to hold up against attacks that aren't pure force, and it seems to be mindless and only functions off of that hand guy's orders. He said it was created to kill you and us. That's right, All Might. This Namu is the perfect thing created to kill you and those flying pests. It's the anti-symbol of peace, Tamura said off on the side, laughing dramatically. All right, that was a lot to take in. All Might felt a cold sweat go down his neck when he heard it had multiple quirks. But he could worry about that later. Right now he needed to focus on the battle. He heard crying and muttering, and looked up in the distance to see Eri still having a mental breakdown. What happened to her? Izuku looked up at Eri. We tried to get her to erase the Namu, but she's still not over the last time she erased something. Which fucking sucks because I really wish we could just turn this thing to nothing. Kota shouted in frustration. Couldn't you just blast the thing with water until it dies? All Might asked Kota. Kota rolled his eyes. Geez, why didn't I try that? Oh, wait, I did. It regenerates too fucking fast. I'd have to blast that thing for fucking minutes straight at full power. But I don't have enough power left. I already used up half my fucking power supply holding it off. As the Namu started to finish up its regeneration process and began to rise, All Might began to take in the situation. There was an opponent who was perfectly built to take all of his attacks and dish them back. Marvel Akka was freaking the hell out and didn't seem like she was gonna be of much help for a while. Marvel Midori didn't seem to know what to do. And Marvel AI could damage it, but apparently, the Marvels had a power limit and he had used about half of his. With the Namu now back to full capacity and coming towards him, All Might knew what he had to do. Go beyond. He charged forward and met the Namu halfway. And the punch-off began. The Namu and All Might punched each other rapidly, both of them unleashing dozens of punches per second at each other, all with enough power to send those same hurricane-like winds out all around them. Didn't you hear? He was made to take all of your punches, even at 100%. Tamura laughed as he guarded his face against the winds. AI, help him out. Izuku once again ordered. To CH. Kota got ready to unleash another water blast. But All Might stopped him. No, don't intervene. All Might told him. If this thing wants a brawl, then I'll give it one. If it was built to take my punches at 100%. All Might dug his feet into the ground, and Namu started moving backward and recoiling as the hero's punches started to affect it. Then I'll have to punch it at beyond 100%. All Might shouted. His muscles were screaming, and what's left of his insides were on fire, but he kept on going, giving more than everything he had and laying into the Namu. Eventually, he punched it hard enough to send it flying back, and he chased after it and continued laying on the beating. Whoa! Izuku looked on in awe as his hero unleashed fisticuff hell on the Namu, and their fight raged all around the plaza, breaking apart the ground and the trees and whatever else was around as the two titans duked it out. Izuku wanted to indulge in his fanboying so hard right now, to be confident that All Might would beat this thing through pure power, despite the obvious work that had gone into making sure that would be impossible. But the smart side of him couldn't help but notice the excessive amount of blood coming from the hero's mouth. Even though All Might could now hurt Namu, Namu seemed to be hurting him a lot more. Each punch Namu gave wasn't softened by shock absorption or healed by regeneration. He took all those raw, and they hurt like hell. And that wasn't even mentioning all the blows he took to his weak spot. Those made him feel like he was gonna die each time the Namu hit it, and the Namu was hitting it every other second. It wasn't the one-sided slaughterfest like Tamriel wanted, but the battle was still in Namu's favor, and it was all their fault. We powered up the Namu by blasting it with lighting. If we didn't do that, then All Might might have been able to overpower it. Izuku thought. Think, Izuku. I have to find a way to help. But we can't punch hard enough to overpower its shock absorption, and we can't shoot lightning because of its weight. All quirks have limits. The shock absorption could only absorb so much. So maybe its electricity absorption has the same weakness, and the electricity will cause it to explode or something. We have to shoot it with lightning. Izuku turned to Kota, who looked at him wide-eyed. What? Midori, this thing is immune to lightning. Kota pointed out. No, it's absorbing it, just like it was absorbing the shock from our punches. And just like All Might can overpower its shock absorption, maybe we can overpower its lightning absorption. Izuku explained. Kota thought about it for a moment, before realizing that he had a point. But still, that thing gets stronger the more we zap it, and I'm already at half power. I know, that's why we have to hit it hard and fast. And we have to hit it. Izuku looked up at Eri. Together. So that means we have to get Eri to get her shit together. Kota sighed. Alright, let's do this before All Might dies on us. With their course of action decided, they quickly zoomed over to Eri, who was still crying in the air. Eri, come on, we need you to snap out of it. Izuku shouted at her, grabbing onto her shoulders and shaking her around. Eri, come on, we're all gonna die. I'm sorry. Eri just kept sobbing, stuck in a trauma-induced trance. Izuku's words fell deaf on her ears, seeing that none of this was working. And time was running out. Kota did something he knew he was going to regret later. Slap. Eri recoiled back as Kota's hand slapped her across the face, so hard that it left a red mark on her cheek. Kota, what the heck? Izuku turned to the blue marvel angrily. We don't have time for this shit. We need her to wake the fuck up. Kota argued. What? Eri didn't know what just happened. One moment everything was so hazy, and the next, she felt a stinging pain in her right-left cheek. What happened? Izuku decided he could scold Kota about this later. Right now he had to tell Eri the plan. Eri, All Might came in and is fighting Namu, but he's losing. We have to shoot it with as much electricity as we can, and it might explode. But we need to do it together, or we're all gonna die. Oh, okay, Eri answered as quickly as she could. Alright, Izuku said, as all three marvels turned their attention towards All Might and the Namu, still exchanging blows across the plaza. First, we're gonna need to get it to be still. Ko-AI, blast it with water again. Give me a few seconds to talk to All Might. Got it. Kota flew forward towards All Might and Namu's fight. And as he flew in overhead, he blasted Namu's head with another pressurized blast of water, destroying it entirely and sending his limp body to the ground for a moment. Izuku then quickly zipped next to All Might with Eri following in behind him. We're going to overload its electricity absorption power. If we do that, there is a chance that it might just explode. But to do that, we need you to make sure this thing stands still while we do it. It's gonna get stronger the more electricity we pump into it, but we have to do this. All Might looked at the quickly regenerating Namu. Really, the only way he could make sure this thing stayed down is if there wasn't anything left for it to grow back from, which was what Izuku's plan was. It wouldn't be easy, but it's what he had to do. Alright, consider it done. Just as the Namu's head finished regenerating, All Might dashed right at it and grabbed its right arm and brought it behind it, and then he grabbed the Namu's other arm and brought that behind it too until he had the Namu in a lock. Namu struggled a bit, and All Might also struggled to keep Namu in place, but he was barely able to do it. Alright, marvelous, attack, Izuku shouted. He, Kota, and Eri all charged up lighting in their hands, before bringing them forward and shooting it out at the Namu at max power. The Namu's body absorbed the electricity, its metallic parts glowing blue as its muscles increase in size. Giorar, Gak Gra H. All Might struggled more and more as the Namu got stronger and stronger each second. What are they doing? Tamura asked over on the side. Don't they know that only makes it stronger? They might be trying to overload Namu's quirk, like All Might did. Kurogiri realized. If that happened, then it's very likely that the Namu would explode. Tamura's eyes widened as he realized that now he could actually lose. Namu, forget All Might. Focus on the marvels. Kill them now. The Namu struggled more and more to free itself of All Might's grasp, and after a few more jerks, he managed to free his arms. No, All Might shouted. He charged forward and grabbed Namu by the neck, but Namu elbowed All Might in the ribs, breaking them and causing All Might to cough up a lot of blood. Namu charged forward at the marvels who stood their ground, hoping the thing would just die already. It cocked its fist back as it neared Kota, ready to punch him down and out. Until only a few feet away from its target, its body was frozen completely. Izuku was confused until he looked and saw a trail of ice leading over to the Namu Framon of the UA. Students, Shoto Todoroki had joined the fight, and he wasn't alone. Off on the side, Tamura was suddenly hit in the back with an explosion and sent flying forward. Gah! What? Kurogiri barely managed to dodge an attack from Kirishima, going right next to Tamura. Damn it! Kirishima cursed his late timing. Tamura stood up and saw that he and Kurogiri were now surrounded by the returning 1A students. Students, what are you doing here? All Might shouted out. The marvels went in and the problem was not solved after 10 minutes, so we figured something was wrong. Todoroki explained, and we came to help. Mina shouted. You have to leave, it's too dangerous here. All Might warned them. Leave? Are you kidding? We got these shitty villains trapped. Bakugo barked. Shigaraki, I believe it's time for us to leave, Kurogiri suggested. What? No, there's still a chance. Namu can still beat them, Tamura shouted out, enraged at what his lackey was suggesting. We are already surrounded. Even if the Namu wins, if they take us out, it will be with orders and practically useless, and the heroes will take all of us, Kurogiri pointed out, opening a warp gate inside himself. It's time to go. Oh no, you fucking don't, Bakugo shouted, charging forward using his explosions to increase his speed. Tamura hated it, but Kurogiri had a point. He went back into Kurogiri's warp gate and exited the battle. Just as Bakugo was about to reach them, Kurogiri vanished, leaving through his warp gate away from the USJ. Damn it, Bakugo growled. Meanwhile, back with Namu, he quickly thawed out and broke out of the ice, the lightning doing a lot to thaw out its insides. However, it was clear that Namu's electricity absorption was starting to reach its limit. Its body was bulging. Its muscles had started to overtake the metal part and were pulsating with electricity. Rahhhh. Namu was about to continue its charge, but All Might dashed towards it and tried to grab its body to stop it. Todoroki sent out another wave of ice, only freezing Namu's lower body, stopping it where All Might's hands were. Rahhhh. Namu screamed as its body just kept getting more bloated, looking like it could burst at any second. We're almost there, Izuku shouted. I'm running out of power, Kota warned. Namu broke its legs out of the ice easily and elbowed All Might in the face again. But All Might held on. Again and again, Namu elbowed him, and with each blow, All Might's grip weakened. He can't hold him for long. It's gonna get us, Eri cried out in fear. Giorarar. Izuku grit his teeth. They needed more. Kota was running out of power, and the Namu wasn't gonna stay away from them for long. They needed something big and something fast. But they were already using their lightning at full power. What more could they? And then, Izuku got an idea. Guys, we have to hit it with the sky lightning, Izuku explained hurriedly. The what? Kota asked. The lightning that comes from the sky. When we say the name, Izuku explained. It's the most powerful lightning we have. But if we do that, everyone will know who we are, Kota reminded him. It's better than dying, Izuku pointed out. We have to charge it, and the moment we all grab onto it, we all say the name. Are you two with me? Kota and Eri hesitated, but they looked at the Namu that was slowly pulling All Might off of him and knew they had no other option. They both nodded, determined to live. All right, go. All three of them flew towards the Namu, not letting up with their lightning attacks still. Even when they reached him and clung onto his massive bulging body, they still pumped him with lightning. Namu turned its attention towards his prey and raised its arms to strike them, but it never got the chance. SHAZAM. KRAKOOM. From the sky, 3 large lightning bolts all came down on one location, hitting the Namu all at once. KOOMMM. Its body overtaxed. The moment the lightning hit the Namu, it exploded, consuming All Might and the marvels. Todoroki barely reacted in time and created a massive wall of ice in front of him. But all that did was soften the blow as the explosion tore through his ice and sent him flying back. And when he hit the floor, he was unconscious. The rest of the class had to look away from the blast. Luckily, they were far enough away for it not to reach them. A few seconds later, the explosion died down. leaving only a massive cloud of dust and ash. Holy crap, Mina cursed, staring at the massive cloud where the explosion had been. All Might, Toru cried in concern. Do you guys think he's okay? TCH, it's All Might. Of course, he's fine. It's the Marvels we should be fucking worried about. Bakugo told them. And Todoroki too. He was close to the explosion. Momo pointed out. Well, what are we just standing here for? Kirishima shouted out. We should. Let us handle it, Mr. Kirishima, came a familiar animal's voice. All the students looked up at the USJ entrance and saw Nezu standing alongside Ida and all the other UA pro heroes. It seems as if we're a bit late, Nezu said, but we'll take care of the rest. Izuku slowly opened his eyes. Oh, he was so tired. He'd used up a lot of energy trying to get Namu to explode. Not as much as Kota, but still quite a bit. His eyes widened, and he instantly became alert. Namu, he jolted up, using his fear to energize him, and he quickly looked around. It was hard to see through the smoke, but he could see what was in his immediate surroundings. And what he saw quickly put his fears to rest. He saw Eri and Kota passed out on the ground, and pieces of Namu's flesh and mechanical parts scattered around the ground. It was over. They were safe. Exhaustion washed over him, and his legs almost gave way. But he couldn't afford to pass out now. Kota had used up all his energy, so he was out. And Eri most likely passed out from both emotional and physical exhaustion, so he didn't anticipate her waking up anytime soon. It was all up to him to get them home. And fortunately, with all the smoke around them, no one saw them turn back into their kid forms. And thanks to that smoke, he could transform without anyone seeing. Hi, why are you here? Izuku's pupils shrank, and dread filled his heart. He turned around, and saw Momo Yaoyorozu standing over him. Oh come on. Izuku was tearing up. Why couldn't things be easy for them? Just once. Don't cry. Don't cry. Don't cry. Oh dear, I didn't mean to alarm you. Momo quickly tried to reassure Izuku, who she just saw as a scared child. She then bent down and scooped him up. Are you okay? Are you injured? This did not help, partially because now Izuku was trapped. If he called down his lightning, it would hit her too. Also, she was now holding Izuku against her body, in her very exposing hero costume, and Izuku did not appreciate that in the slightest. I'm fine now, please let me go, Izuku said, his face beet red, as he lightly struggled to get out of Momo's grip, but to no avail. That's no good. I have to get you to the teachers at once. Momo was about to leave, when she noticed Kota and Eri lying there. There's more of you? Wherever did you all come from? We were hostages. Izuku came up with the best excuse he could come up with. The villains kidnapped us and used us as hostages, but the Marvels showed up and saved us. I see, but how did you get here? Momo asked him. I don't know. Izuku feigned ignorance, not being able to come up with a better explanation in his flustered state. He hoped that being a scared little kid would make her stop questioning him. Foreignty it was, and Momo gave him a look of pity. All right, well, I'll have to get you three some help. And no, it's fine. Izuku tried to convince her, to little avail. Can someone assist me? Momo called out into the smoke. Izuku got more and more nervous as three figures arrived from the smoke. Mina, Ochako, and Kirishima arrived. Kirishima was carrying an unconscious Todoroki. Hey Momo, what a cutie. Mina stopped and squealed when she saw Izuku and the others, before frowning when she remembered where they were. Wait, why are kids here? Oh no, are they hurt? Ochako said, going up to inspect Izuku, getting much closer than he appreciated. And no, Izuku was quickly trying to figure out a way to escape, but he couldn't think of anything, partially because of his close proximity to a girl. Seeing Izuku's bright red face and the steam that was nearly coming off of him, Mina giggled and looked at Momo. Yeah Momo, you might want to let the kid go. You're gonna give him a weird taste for skin chips when he grows up. Momo looked down at Izuku's face, and where she was holding him, and her face quickly matched Izuku in redness. I see. See, can someone else take them, please? I got them. Ochako went over and touched Izuku's head, making him blush further with embarrassment, before he realized something felt weird. Momo let him go. And much to his confusion, he didn't fall to the floor, instead he just floated like he was in space. Whoa, Izuku looked down at his dangling legs, floating in midair. It was slightly different from flying. Different in that he had no control of this, unlike his flight. He was just floating. You like it? It's my quirk. It lets me turn off the gravity of anything I touch with all 5 of my fingers. Ochako explained to him, before going on to touch both Eri and Kota, bring the 2 unconscious floating kids next to Izuku. This is amazing. That's so cool. You could be a great rescue hero. Seeing a cool quirk did manage to calm Izuku down a bit, before he remembered the situation he was in. Oh no, now we're really trapped. Now all 3 of them were stuck midair. He literally could not run away. Ochako grabbed them all in her arms, keeping them together. How could this get any worse? As if the universe was trying to say, yes it could. Eri started to wake up. Oh, Izuku thought. Oh, another one is waking up, Kirishima said. Iri looked around groggily for a bit before her brain woke up. She remembered the Namu and started looking around to see if it was dead, before quickly realizing that she was in her child form and that she was in the arms of someone she didn't know. The students saw the girl starting to panic as tears started glimmering in the corner of her eyes. Hey, it's okay. The villains are gone now. Mina tried to reassure her, but to no avail. As Sha before Iri could say the word, Izuku covered her mouth. Don't say it, Izuku shouted. Don't say the word. Iri gave him a confused and fearful look, and Izuku gave her a determined, reassuring look in return. We're Akayo, have to trust me, Izuku told her. The determination in Izuku's voice, and the fact that it was Izuku saying it, calmed Iri down to a degree, and she gave him a look showing her trust in him. Izuku took his hand off of Iri's mouth and turned to the very confused Yue. Students, sorry about her. Iri gets scared very easily, and Ush was trying to say a no word, so I had to stop her. Sorry. The students gave them a weird look before shrugging it off. They were kids after all. 90. Any sign of the marvels? Nezu asked Snipe after the hero just got back from surveying the building. None, sorry. Snipe apologized. Nezu sighed and shook his head. Well, they couldn't have gone through the exits, we had those covered. Did you see any signs of them flying through the roof? No, Snipe answered. But it's possible I missed something. Well, you should focus on rounding up the remaining villains, Nezu told the hero, who nodded and ran back into the building. Nezu's ever-present was nearly slipping. This was a disaster. Villains attacked his students with an all-might-worthy monster, and the marvels broke in, and now nobody knew where they were. At least no one was hurt except All Might. Fortunately, Semnitas came in and kept anyone from seeing him in his skinny form. But he was still in pretty bad shape, all things considered. Principal Nezu. The animal principal heard one of his students shout from behind him. Now, whatever Nezu expected to see when he turned around, this was not it. Behind him was Ochako Uraraka, carrying 3 children who were very obviously smaller versions of the marvels. Nezu thought that their true forms may have been smaller than their marvel forms, but he never expected them to be actual children. This made things so much more complicated. His students didn't seem to realize who they had in their grasp. Most likely they didn't think too much about it because they were children. Perhaps they were just writing off their obvious resemblance to the marvels as a coincidence, and Nezu might have been able to do the same, if it weren't for the fact that Kota Izumi, someone they suspected to be related to Marvel AI, was here, where the marvels were, whom had seemingly disappeared. And he was right next to a boy that looked like Marvel Midori and a girl that looked like Marvel Aka. As the children approached him, Nezu thought about the best way to proceed. Children, where on earth did you find them? They were in the smoke, the place where All Might and the Marvels fought that monster. Momo explained. They said the League kidnapped them to use them as hostages. Nezu looked at Marvel Midori and Marvel Aka, who were giving him a desperate look that said please buy it. If he wasn't sure they were the Marvels before, he would be now. I see. Well, it's a good thing we found them then. Nezu would play along. It was all part of his plan. Do you two think you can take the third one and make it home by yourselves? The 2 conscious Marvels. And the students looked at him in shock. Why yes, Izuku and Iri answered immediately. Well then, Ms. Uraraka, please put them down so they can go home. Nezu instructed his student. Wah, Principal Nezu, you can't be serious. Momo asked the principal. Of course I am. They appear to be uninjured, and they said they can make it home. Nezu told her. Ms. Uraraka, if you would. But Ochako stopped when she saw the look Nezu was giving her, telling her that this was not a request. With some trepidation, Ochako set the children down on the ground and undid the effects of her quirk. Almost immediately, Izuku grabbed the unconscious Kota's arms. Thank you for everything, but we should get home now. Our parents will be worried. Iri grabbed his legs. Iri quickly did as instructed, and the 2 ran off, carrying Kota with them. Once they were out of earshot, Nezu turned to his students, being me Ms. Hagakure, with haste. 90. After getting a good distance away from Yue, the kids ducked into an alleyway and placed Kota on the ground before stopping to catch their breath. Izuku stopped when suddenly Iri latched onto him and started crying into his shoulder. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. The horned girl sobbed. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Iri kept sobbing, muttering she was sobbing, and Izuku put his arms around her and started patting her on the back. It's okay, it's okay. Izuku reassured her. We're okay. It's all over now. After a few minutes, Izuku managed to calm her down. Let's just go home, he told her, looking around to make sure no one was looking, before looking back at Iri. Do you have enough energy to get back home? I think so, Iri stuttered. I'm tired. We can rest when we get home, Izuku told her. Here, let's do it together. 3, 2, 1, SHAZAM. They both shouted at the same time. KRAKOOM. Lightning came out of the clear sky and struck the 2 of them, transforming them into their champion forms. Izuku grabbed Kota, and the 2 took off into the sky. Little did they know, someone had been watching. They just couldn't see her. 100. Once again, the pro-heroes were gathered in a police briefing room. Given that it was the same heroes that had been gathered for the Marvel's meeting, the heroes assumed this meeting was once again about the troublesome trio. Thank you for gathering, everyone. Nezu was in the front of the room this time. As you may have surmised, we will be talking about the Marvels again. Did we manage to find their identities? Kamui Woods asked. Can we finally go after them? Mariko asked eagerly. Yes and no. Nezu answered. We did find out their identities, but it's complicated. Of course it is, Aizawa said, while in a full body cast. Nezu pulled out a remote and pressed the power button, displaying the image of Izuku, Eri, and Kota in their child forms on a screen behind him. These are the Mavel's true forms. What? Shouted pretty much every hero there. Wait a minute, are you telling me that the Marvels are children? Ryukyu shouted in shock and outrage. All this time we've been fighting kids. Fatgum was in disbelief, with a look of shock and horror on his face. Are you saying we've been getting our asses handed to us by toddlers? Mariko shouted, now seeming even more pissed than before. Everyone, please quiet down, Crust told everyone, and after a few minutes, the room became quiet. Principal Nezu, please explain. How could the Marvels, some of the most powerful vigilantes in history, be children who don't even appear to be over 10? Well, as you are all likely well aware, there was an attack on UA 2 days ago. Nezu started to explain. Me and my staff will be handling the issue of the League of Villains, but another group that showed up was the Marvels. However, as we were cleaning up, one of my students came to me, holding these 3 children together. Apparently they were found where the Marvels had last been seen fighting the villains, and their explanation was that they were taken hostage, although there was no report of anyone seeing them anywhere in the facility beforehand, and all the villains we captured knew nothing of any hostages. They also said they needed to get home to their parents, despite the fact that all of them are orphans. And if you remember correctly, one of them is Kota Izumi, someone we suspected was connected to Marvel AI. So his appearance here alongside 2 other children who look identical to Marvel Midori and Aka tells me that they are in fact the Marvels. And also, this. Nezu pressed a button on the remote, and it showed a video of Eri and Izuku transforming before flying away with Kota. There were a few moments of silence in the room before Fatgum spoke. So what do we do now? He asked. They're kids. We can't just beat them into submission. Why not? Mariko gave him an irritated look. Why not? Fatgum looked at the rabbit hero with fury in his eyes. They're kids. They're like Nezu. How old are they? AI and Aka are 7, Midori is 8. Nezu answered. Are you telling me you don't have an issue with fighting kids who haven't even hit the double digits yet? Fatgum shouted. Well, what are we gonna do? Just ask them nicely to stop? Mariko asked sarcastically. You think any kid with that much power would bother listening to us? There has to be a better way. Crust protested. What kind of heroes would we be if we laid our hands on innocent children? Innocent? Hawks raised an eyebrow. They're vigilantes. They're children, Crust argued. They don't know the consequences of what they're doing. And they're orphans. They don't have any parents to explain this to them. We need to tell them that what they're doing is. And you think they're just gonna stand there and let you explain it to them? Aizawa said, his voice slightly muffled by the bandages. I'm not any more eager about the thought of attacking orphan children, but we don't have much a choice here. There's always a choice, Fatgum argued. We're heroes. We find a way to do what's right. Heroes also have to know when to compromise. Night Eye finally spoke up. Nezu, before we continue this debate, let's hear more about these children. Very well. Nezu pressed another button on the remote, and the screen showed an image of Kota Izumi, son the water hose duo. We've gone over most of the information about him, except for a few things, one of which is his quirk, hydrokinesis, a combination of his parents' quirks. It allows him to shoot water from his palms and control it, an ability Marvel AI had never displayed until the USJ, where All Might said he saw Marvel AI use this ability. And as for the other bit of information, well, we'll get to that later. Nezu pressed a button, and the image changed, this time to show Izuku. This is Izuku Midoriya. Funnily enough, his last name was similar to his vigilante name the whole time. He was diagnosed as quirkless at age 6, with his father walking out on him soon after. Scum, Ryukyu scowled. Not too long after, his mother died in a fire, and he was placed into the care of family friend Mitsuki Bakugo and her husband Masaru. However, a few days later he ran away. Nezu explained. Given what we know about the Bakugo family, abuse is suspected as a possible reason why he ran, although questioning their son has now shown any evidence of this. Poor kid. Being quirkless can't be easy. Fatgum gave the image a sad look. He would have never thought that kid smiling brightly in the photo would have gone through so much. Next, we have Eri. Nezu pressed a button and showed an image of Eri, or rather, a drawing of Eri. Why is it a drawing and not a picture like the other two? Kamui asked. Because there are no pictures of her. Nezu explained. There is no information about her at all. No information. Night Eye asked. No parents, backstory, no school information, nothing. No, Nezu shook his head. The only reason we know her name is Iri is because according to one of my students, Midoriya called her that. And that's assuming he used her real name. She has no records, no birth certificate, and there have been no missing children reports fitting her description. And there has been only one report of her being seen before. Watch. Nezu pressed another button. And another video played on the screen. This time it showed a security camera feed from a train station. Everything was happening as usual, until a cry was heard from out of view. Help! Izuku, Kota and Iri all ran in. Bad men. They touched me in my no-no places. And now I can't be a bride anymore. Iri cried. The heroes then watched as the crowd rushed the children onto the train, as two of Overhaul's goons came in. Those are Overhaul's men, Night Eye pointed out as the video ended. Indeed, but it doesn't end there, Nezu explained, because those 3 children never got off that train. What? Death Arms asked. The people on that train reported that the children simply vanished in a flash of light. Nezu explained. They never got off that train. And funnily enough, do you want to know who did get off that train? The Marvels. Wait, if we had this information then how didn't we know their identities sooner? Death Arms asked. Because no one noticed the Marvels on the train. Nezu continued. No one reported the Marvels teleporting or suddenly appearing. But when we tracked down the people on the train and at the station, none of them said they remembered the Marvels getting on the train. Somehow the Marvels reappeared on the train, without anyone noticing. That doesn't sound possible, Best Jeanist commented. Well, whatever happened, the next time these kids were at a police station, they entered and were seen by some officers, but they left being carried, unconscious, by those same officers, who claimed that they were bringing them home. Nezu explained. But seeing as how they were definitely never brought back, and the children were being chased by Overhaul's men for whatever reason, it's safe to say that those officers knocked them unconscious and brought them to Overhaul. Night Eye scowled. That must have been why no one ever saw the Marvels enter Overhaul's base, and why they were there to begin with, as well as all those reports of lightning bolts coming out of the sky. Endeavor added. From what we've seen, they need to be hit by lightning that they summon to transform in and out of their Marvel forms. But none of this explains how they got their powers in the first place. Ryukyu pointed out. I have a theory, Nezu said. But first a question. Why were they running from Overhaul and his henchmen? Because they're crooks. Fat Gum stated the obvious. But if they had their powers, then why not just find a conspicuous place to transform and take them down themselves? Nezu pointed out. If they had their powers, why bother with this? Unless of course they didn't have their powers yet. Night Eye came to the same conclusion Nezu did. Right, I believe whatever happened on that train is when they were given their powers, Nezu said, because it's very clear they weren't born with them at this point. But as to who or what gave them their powers, I have no ideas. That was a lie. He had a prediction that All for One was behind this, but it's not like he could tell anyone else that. Well then our mission is clear, isn't it? Endeavor said. We need to take them out, and fast. Fat Gum opened his mouth to retort, but Endeavor beat him to it. I understand that they're children, but that only makes them more dangerous. Endeavor countered. Children are impulsive and prone to act on emotion. Marvel AI has shown this numerous times. What if one day Marvel AI has enough of a particular news station and decides to pay them a visit? How much destruction do you think a child with the power of All Might throwing a tantrum would cause? After that there was a pause, as the more tentative heroes had to concede to the fact that the Flame Hero had a point. Children that young should not be trusted with power that great. It's amazing that they haven't killed anyone yet. Endeavor continued. But we can't just wait until they either make a mistake or just grow tired of being slandered in the media. We need to take them down before someone gets hurt. Not to mention, there is someone capable of giving power like this to people, and the Marvels are our only lead. They're too important to allow things like age to stop us. It's not an option. Once again, the heroes in the room who weren't already on board had to concede, although it was obvious to see they didn't like it one bit. Thank you, Endeavor, Nezu said, before continuing. Now, we can't release their identities to the public for obvious reasons. If people found out that that kind of power was in the hands of children, it would cause a panic. Not to mention it would harm hero society regardless of our actions. On one hand, you'll have people asking how we haven't managed to catch 2 7-year-olds and an 8-year-old yet. And on the other hand, you'll have people outraged that we'll be fighting children at all. However, this information will be given out to a limited number of pro-heroes. Suddenly Crust raised his hand. Yes, Nezu called on him. You don't think that Overhaul actually touched the girl in that way, do you? Crust asked, his face showing that he desperately hoped the answer was no. Suddenly the mood in the room shifted, as everyone's faces quickly matched Crust as they looked at Nezu for an answer. He would not know. Nezu answered, the smile gone from his face. Night Eye was the one who had been studying the Yakuza, so it would be up to him. Everyone looked at Night Eye, whose expression remained neutral as he pushed up his glasses. Given what I know of Kai Chisaki, I wouldn't have suspected it of him, but I wouldn't put it above him either. And given Marvel's Aka's behavior, it's most certainly not out of the question. Shit, that's not an answer, Mariko shouted. Well, I don't have a definitive answer, Night Eye retorted. That is the best I have. And that uncertain and uncomfortable feeling would plague the room for the rest of the meeting as the heroes wondered what that girl went through. 80. I was punching orphans. Naomasa sighed as his friend vomited blood all over his desk. That's about how I thought you would react to the news. After he stopped choking on his own blood, All Might spoke up. I was punching orphans. Orphan children. Naomasa sighed. He was gonna be like that for a while.